Chapter 4257. Thump, 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 thump. Knocking sounds came from around the ship. A few boatmen ran up sweating profusely and hurriedly said to Long Huan, young lord, it's bad. We don't know what's at the bottom of the ship, but it's digging at the deck. If it's penetrated, the lower cabin will leak. The entire ship might not survive." Long Huan was shocked. It's the sword fang fish. In this vast water, if the ship was penetrated, they could only fly. However, it was hard to tell directions on the sea. If they flew in the wrong direction and had to start all over again, it would be troublesome. Moreover, even the strongest flying spirit beast couldn't fly for more than 10 days without stopping. However, they couldn't stop on the water unless they encountered a small island. According to his experience, the nearest ferry would only arrive tomorrow night. If they changed ships there, if they were lucky, they could buy a ship immediately. If they were unlucky, they would have to wait. Jiang Song, take 10 people down and guard the bottom of the ship. Do your best to get rid of those sword fang fish. Yes. Ao Hai, come with me to meet the crown princess and the rest. Long Huan took a deep breath and closed his eyes tiredly. There were still so many days left on this trip. If he didn't build a good relationship with the little crown princess, the journey would be very difficult. It was also his fault. He knew that the little crown princess was someone who couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes, but he had to use the corpse puppet to test her. In the end, he went for wool and came home shorn. He almost lost his sister's life. Long Huan brought Ao Hai to the second floor of the ship and knocked on the door of the little crown princess's room. It was Mu Xingchen who opened the door. Long Huan was slightly startled and exchanged glances with Mu Xingchen. When he walked in, he saw that the Feng brothers were also drinking tea in the room. The little crown princess was sitting by the window, propping up her chin as she stared at the surging river outside. She didn't even turn her head when she heard Long Huan enter. Long Huan cupped his hands at everyone. Everyone is here. What's the matter, young Lord Long? Mo Lien raised her brows slightly and looked at the person in front of her with a half-smile. Actually, how could they not know why Long Huan was here at this time? However, he should have the attitude of asking for help. Hearing Long Huan say it personally, he felt more at ease. Long Huan was a little embarrassed, but he was a flexible person. After cupping his hands at Crown Prince Mo and the others, Long Ji explained with a smile, Your Highness the Crown Prince, everyone, the current situation is rather urgent. Mutated sword fang fish have gathered below the ship's hold outside, so we need your help. Of course, I've already sent my clansmen to clean them up. However, there are too many sword fang fish. I'm afraid they won't be able to handle it. If we can get the help of the brothers of the Phoenix clan, this matter should be easier to resolve. Also, the zither-playing corpse puppet outside. Long Huan smiled bitterly. You should have seen it just now. This corpse puppet's level is extremely high. Without your help, we wouldn't have been able to handle it. I hope. Long Huan cupped his hands awkwardly at the others. Please help me. Mu Xingchen glanced at him indifferently. Young Master Long is too polite. It's our duty. After all, we're also on this ship. It's our duty to help. However, can young Master Long guarantee that your clansmen won't backstab others? Mu Xingchen said indifferently. We don't want to have to deal with our companions behind us when we help. Chapter 4258. Long Huan's expression froze. Cousin, you're overthinking things. How could our Long clan do such a thing? That's not necessarily true. Xiao Mu said apathetically, haven't you done enough backstabbing and entrapping? Long Huan suppressed his anger and took a deep breath. He cupped his hands at Arbor. Cousin was in the wrong just now. I shouldn't have joked about the corpse puppet with Cousin. I promise I won't do it again. Arbor tilted his head and continued to support his chin, watching the river. Long Huan was a bit nervous. He thought this cousin of his didn't like him and didn't want others to help. Mu Xingchen walked out. Why are you still standing here? Why aren't you leaving? Long Huan was overjoyed and hurried to follow. He turned back and saw Feng Changqing and Mu Xingchen following him. He couldn't help but sigh in relief. Long Huan couldn't see through the cultivation realms of these two Phoenix clansmen and Prince Mo. He had a feeling that these three people's realms were above his. Arbor watched them leave and frowned. Can Big Brother and the others handle it? A few mutated sword fang fish. What can't they handle? Mo Lien walked to his wife. There are so many people in the Phoenix clan. If they can't even handle these small sword fang fish, then just throw them away. What's the use of bringing them? They're burdensome, useless, and a waste of food. Arbor blinked and patted Prince Mo's head. You're always thinking about sending the Phoenix clan away. Too many people won't help. Mo Lien curled her lips with a disdainful expression. Soon, the two heard fierce thumping sounds from below the cabin. Looking down from the window, they could see water splashing on both sides. Suddenly, a sword fang fish jumped up and stuck close to Arbor's window as if it wanted to jump in and bite Arbor's arm. Mo Lien didn't even lift her eyes. With a move of her finger, a cluster of black flames silently roasting the sword fang fish into pieces in a matter of minutes. The fish have mutated. Arbor was worried. I wonder how many things have mutated in this river. Prince Mo wasn't wrong at all. Compared to the land, the situation in the sea seemed to be worse. Don't worry, Jojo. It's just natural selection. Mo Lien put his arm around his wife's shoulder and comforted her softly. Since there are mutated fish, according to the laws of heaven and earth, there will naturally be stronger species that can fight against these mutated fish. Tian Yun's medicine has transformed some people into corpse puppets, but the others have comprehended special abilities. Rivers and lakes can be proved by the same principle. All living things will follow the rules. You don't have to worry too much. He was worried that his wife would worry about everything. Arbor looked up at him and nodded in amusement. I don't worry too much. I can't manage too many things. Just stay true to your heart and do your best. Don't force anything. It seems to be quieter. Let's go out and take a look. Mo Lien held her little hand and the two walked out of the cabin together. The dim red color on the horizon was reflected in the river water, revealing a faint scarlet color. The zither-playing corpse puppet was nowhere to be seen. A dozen or so Dragon Clan members were cleaning up the messy deck. Several boatmen hurriedly ran up to Long Huan and shouted, "Young master, the bottom cabin is leaking." Chapter 4259. Hurry and see if it can be repaired. Long Huan was irritated and followed several boatmen to the bottom cabin. Along the way, he saw the little crown princess and Prince Mo. Long Huan paused and nodded at them. "Cousin, your highness the crown prince, water is seeping into the bottom cabin. I'll go down and take a look first." The little stoic pulled her husband to the side and made way for Long Huan to pass through. After Long Huan hastily led them down, the two people stood on the deck for a while. They gazed at the river in the distance. Under the setting sun's illumination, it appeared a bit bewitching red. Perhaps it was because of the battle just now that the nearby river was dyed red. Feng Changqing quickly walked over. "I'm afraid this ship won't last until the next dock." The ship was already in trouble before entering the sea. In the Feng clan's opinion, the Forgotten River Dragon clan's ability to handle matters was truly lacking. "Where's that harp-stroking zombie?" "It escaped by diving into the water," Feng Changqing replied. The little stoic uttered an "oh." "Then they probably won't last until night. They'll probably be drifting on the river tonight." Feng Changqing couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He really wanted to tell the stoic girl, "We're also in the same boat right now. If others go into the water, we won't fare any better." However, when he saw the little crown princess's calm and disapproving expression, Feng Changqing decided it was better to keep his mouth shut. So as to avoid saying the wrong thing and being rebuked by the little fellow until he doubted his life, Mo Lien glanced at him and consciously pulled his wife closer to him. He asked with a taut face, "How's the situation with the sword-toothed fish?" "The sword-toothed fish that gathered just now have been completely cleaned up." Feng Changqing said, "I just don't know if such a big commotion will attract more mutated fish in the nearby river." "It will," the little crown princess answered him coherently. The two men couldn't help but twitch their mouths. "Inform them to prepare for battle," the little stoic said seriously. "That cultured zombie will probably come again." "Cultured zombie?" Feng Zhangqing and Mo Lien looked at each other and asked with their eyes, Saint Lady, are you serious? Prince Mo glanced at him and gave him a look that said, "Figure it out yourself." The two of them held hands and strolled back to their room to rest. They did not care whether Long Huan was badly battered by the water leak or not. When it was time for dinner, Mu Xingchen, Feng Zhangqing, and Feng Zhangfei returned. When they saw the two of them, they shook their heads and said, "The water in the lower cabin is very serious. It can't be repaired. I estimate that the ship will sink in at most an hour." Sir Jojo frowned. "What are Long Huan and the others doing?" "He's still repairing the lower deck." "Oh, then let's eat first." Xiao Mu calmly took out a lunchbox and started rummaging through it, taking out 4 to 5 plates of piping hot dishes. "Do you want some wine?" Feng Changqing and his brothers stared dumbfoundedly at their holy maiden, unable to speak for a long time. At this freaking time, her holy maiden was actually asking them if they wanted to drink wine? "If you don't want to drink, then hurry up and eat." Feng Zhangfei's mouth twitched. Weren't everyone present at the god realm or above? Did they need to eat 3 meals a day like mortals? Prince Mo swept the 3 of them a glance. Feng Changqing and the other 2 sat down resignedly. "My master said that humans are made of iron and rice is made of steel. If you don't eat, you'll starve. No matter how high your cultivation is, you still have to eat." They nodded like chicks pecking at rice. Chapter 4260. Your Majesty, you're right. When Long Qian rushed in to look for them, this was the heartwarming scene he saw. He felt inexplicably sorrowful and speechless. Feng Changqing and his brother held their bowls of rice and turned to look at Long Qian. They saw that the originally handsome young master in white was now covered in dirt. A trace of sympathy rose in their hearts. "The Wangchuan dragon clan seem to be a little pitiful. You actually still have the mood to eat here." Long Shangyun squeezed in from behind Long Qian and shouted in exasperation. Long Qian hurriedly raised his hand to grab her and quickly walked in. He cupped his hands at Arbor and the others. "Your Highness, cousin, I'm afraid this ship won't last for long. We bought a lot of supplies on the ship and need to install them. I wonder if cousin has a free storage talisman to store the supplies on the ship?" These resources were all things that they had bought with real money. Especially the furnishings in the little crown princess room. The gilded copper incense burner, the gold-threaded Phoebe Jinan wood table, and the weeping silk quilt. These had to be installed. Long Qian felt a little bitter. There was still half a month's journey before they reached Wangchuan. They had to continue living on a tight budget. The little crown princess happened to have finished eating. She glanced at him and did not make things difficult for him. She pulled her husband up silently and followed Long Qian out. When they reached the door of the cargo hold, the little crown princess took out an empty storage talisman and stored all the supplies in the cargo hold into it. Long Shangyun heaved a sigh of relief and naturally reached out her hand to the little crown princess. However, the little crown princess ignored her from beginning to end. After storing the supplies, she put the jade talisman into her inner world. Long Shangyun almost exploded on the spot. "Crown Princess, what do you mean by this? I'll give you the supplies after we change to a new ship." Xiao Mu rebuked Long Shangyun expressionlessly. "You didn't think that I would give you a storage talisman for free in addition to helping you? May I ask where your shame is? Where's your shame?" Long Shangyun was so angry that she couldn't speak. The experience of past tragedies told Long Shangyun that it was best not to refute the little crown princess at this time. Otherwise, she might get beaten up again. This crown princess was simply an evil little demon. She would immediately draw her sword and brandish her fists when she couldn't even finish a sentence with you. "Why don't you give it a try? The little crown princess will definitely beat you up until you start doubting your life." "They're baffling." The little stoic looked up at Mo Lien. Prince Mo laughed as he nodded. He pulled his wife's hand and walked out. "Young Master Long, I hope you don't forget that we are only here to help you. It doesn't matter if you don't help." What a joke. Didn't Long Huan run in himself and ask them to use the storage talisman to collect the supplies on the ship? He had a lot of demands, and he even wanted his wife to hand over the storage talisman. It was really baffling. Long Huan smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. "Yes, please continue to help me collect the goods on the ship. Don't forget about the things in your rooms. Those were all money. Long Huan's heart was very dismal. He kept feeling that he was truly lowly enough serving this young couple on this journey. Return to the river of forgetfulness. Return to the river of forgetfulness. Return to the river of forgetfulness. Everything will be fine. Long Huan reminded himself in his mind and silently swallowed his bitterness. Chapter 4261. Long Huan reached out and tightly grasped Long Shangyun's wrist, afraid that his sister would go mad from anger and not be able to hold back from making things difficult for the young crown prince consort. After a few times, the brother and sister were very clear that there seemed to be absolutely no benefit in clashing with the stoic-faced crown prince consort. Big brother. Long Shangyun was so angry that she wanted to cry. She had never seen such a vile person. Long Shangyun felt that if she continued to interact with the young crown princess like this, the latter would drive her crazy sooner or later. Why don't we go our separate ways? Big brother. Long Shangyun's anger had yet to dissipate. No. Long Huan shook his head. He did want to go their separate ways from the young crown princess since she was so difficult to get along with. However, the problem was that he had to ensure that the young crown princess would not turn back midway and reach the river of forgetfulness safely. Bear with it for a while, Shangyun. Long Huan knew that his sister had been spoiled by her family since she was young. She had suffered too much at the hands of the crown princess these few days, and his heart ached for her. However, in order to successfully complete this mission, she did not mind suffering a little. Long Huan took a deep breath and said, "Your cousin has an eccentric personality and doesn't play by the rules. Just keep your distance from her. With her quiet personality, if you ignore her, she won't take the initiative to find trouble with you. Why do I have to accommodate her in everything?" Long Shangyun was furious and almost flew into a rage. "What cousin? I won't acknowledge her identity. I don't know how Long Chuyun raised her daughter to have such an unruly and disorderly thing. Shangyun." Long Huan hastily covered her mouth in fright and looked around with a guilty conscience. Seeing that there was no one else around, he sighed in relief. If the crown prince consort had heard those words just now, she would definitely have taught Shangyun a lesson. There was no doubt about that. "All right, let's go and get ready. Later, we'll summon your flying bat. We'll rush to the nearest ferry and change boats first. But we're in such a hurry. Is it so easy to change boats?" Long Huan sighed. "Let's take it one step at a time." Right now, he was also extremely anxious. Truly, the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. If he wanted to bring the crown princess back to the river of forgetfulness, why was it so difficult? After the little crown princess looted everything in the room, she followed the 100 people from the Phoenix clan to the deck. At this time, the water on the lower deck had gradually spread to the deck, and the whole hull was tilting to one side. "The ship is sinking." Long Shi turned to look at his sister, Long Shangyun. "Shangyun, summon the flying bats." "Yes, big brother." Long Shangyun waved her hand, and an enormous bat that blended into the night appeared before everyone. Long Yun waved his hand, and the Dragon Clan clansmen carried the boatman and jumped onto the back of the flying bats. "Brother, come up quickly." Long Shangyun stood on the back of the flying bat and looked down at Arbor's group on the deck. She snorted. Long Huan cut open a few partitions in the cabin and quickly placed them into his inner world. If his inner world wasn't so small, he would have placed a few more partitions. Hearing Long Shangyun's voice, Long Huan agreed. He then glanced in the young crown prince consort's direction. Seeing that they were still standing motionlessly on the puddles of water on the deck, he warned with a frown, "Cousin, the ship is about to topple over. You should also quickly summon your flying beasts and follow us to the nearest ferry. There's no need for you to worry." Chapter 4262. Arbor glanced indifferently at Long Shi. The latter sighed and cupped his hands toward them. Then with a leap, he landed beside Long Shangyun. Clang clang. When Long Shi heard the intermittent zither sounds, his expression suddenly changed, and he urged Long Shangyun to hurry and leave. This was the sound of the zither-playing corpse puppet in the day. This fellow wouldn't be here to ambush them again in the dark and windy night, right? After a howl, a white figure pounced at the flying bat, instantly eliciting panicked screams. Long, she shouted in a low voice, "Don't panic. Activate the defensive barrier." Boom boom boom. Gusts of strong wind flowed down from the sky. In the pitch-black night, everyone could only see the streaks of light emitted by the crisscrossing sword aura. Long Shangyun shouted anxiously, "Hurry, hurry and fly. Go go." The flying bat flapped its wings, flying unsteadily. The people standing on the bat's back naturally fell as well. It was a thrilling experience. "Holy Lady," a Phoenix clansman hurriedly said, "can you allow this subordinate to summon the flying beast? Be careful of that corpse puppet." Boom. Arbor expressionlessly raised her hand and released a black gold arrow. The arrow pierced through the air, carrying a violent gust of wind as it shot viciously toward the head of the corpse puppet pouncing down from the sky. The corpse puppet played its zither, and the zither sounds vibrated, deflecting the black gold arrow. The black gold arrow lost its aim and pierced to the side. It made a turn in the air and shot toward the corpse puppet's head again with a whoosh. This corpse puppet couldn't be so smart. After dodging the first time, it simply didn't expect the black gold arrow to make a turn. The black gold arrow hit the back of its head with a crisp clang. Arbor pulled out a vine whip with hidden barbs from her sleeve and viciously lashed it at the corpse puppet's head. With a crisp crack, the little fellow ruthlessly whipped off a large piece of rotten flesh on the zither-playing corpse puppet's head. The Phoenix clansmen surrounding the little girl all looked at the unusually valiant stoic face with shining eyes. They suddenly cheered and almost applauded. Mo Lien glanced at them speechlessly. "Step back. This bunch of idiots." Whoa. The zither-playing corpse roared. Everyone felt that the boat under their feet was trembling, slowly spinning along with the river. Countless sword fong fishes jumped out of the water and flew to the deck, wanting to bite anyone they saw. It was a pity that these little things were facing experts above the deity realm. Everyone could produce partial divine armor to protect their bodies, so it was impossible for them to be bitten by the sword fong fish. Furthermore, the speed of everyone's attacks was extremely fast. The sword fong fish simply couldn't get close to them. It was chopped into pieces in midair. And, at Arbor's command, everyone floated into the air. Then, they saw the little girl take out several divine power balls from her inner world and throw them at the water below. Boom 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 boom, boom boom. A terrifying explosion shook the entire river, and in that instant, time seemed to stop. A deep whirlpool appeared in the river, and the countless sword fong fishes that were torn to shreds were instantly sucked into the whirlpool. The zither-playing corpse puppet didn't dare to linger and hastily fled with its tail between its legs. Long Qian and his sister, who had already fled some distance away and were standing on the flying bat's back in fear, couldn't help but look back. Chapter 4263. Against the backdrop of the flames, thick smoke billowed up, as if the river water had been ignited and boiled. The momentum was a little frightening. Arbor's small face was expressionless. He looked down coldly at the balls of sword fong fish that were smashed into smithereens. His eyes revealed a trace of disdain. "Despicable means," she said coldly. Then, she took out a glassy sealing ball and threw it into the surging river. Feng Zhangqing and the others were shocked by the little girl's divine powerball. At this time, seeing her throw out another thing, they all held their breaths, waiting for a huge shock. The sealing ball fell, and a 3-story ship slid out from it, instantly falling into the river. Waves surged up as the ship surged forward. "My God!" Feng Zhangfei couldn't help but exclaim, "A ship! Scarlet firmament waves." Obviously, Feng Zhangqing's eyesight was much better than his younger brother Feng Zhangfei's. This sentence hit the nail on the head, and the group of Feng clansmen immediately opened their eyes wide, scrambling to look at the ship. "Let's go!" Arbor waved her hand, and everyone immediately followed the little crown princess and flew to the big ship. It's really tiring to be tossed around in the middle of the night. The little crown princess stood on the deck and turned to look at everyone expressionlessly. "Everyone, wash up and go to bed early. The rooms on the second floor are up to you." With that, she took her husband's slender fingers and pulled him to the third floor. Leaving behind a group of curious Feng clansmen, they touched and looked around excitedly for a long time. They couldn't help but surround Feng Zhangqing and ask about the scarlet firmament waves. Early the next morning, after a night's rest, the Feng clansmen came to the deck refreshed. Only then did they realize that the sun had already risen from the east, and the morning glow sprinkled on the river water, evolving into a magnificent color. Xiao Mu and Emo Lian were currently eating breakfast with Mu Xingchen, so they greeted everyone when they saw them arrive. This scarlet firmament waves is really powerful. I didn't feel any bumps all night, I slept really well. Yeah, after a night's rest, I'm full of energy today. Not to mention that the scarlet firmament blue waves had been operating steadily for an entire night, they didn't have to worry about being attacked at all. The entire Crimson Nimbus Blue Wave ship was a top-grade defensive Saint artifact. As long as they didn't mobilize all the corpse fish in the sea to attack, the hundreds and thousands of fish schools wouldn't pose any threat at all. Breakfast was simple, consisting of meat buns and porridge. Although no one was hungry, it seemed that after following the little crown princess, they had inexplicably developed the habit of eating 3 meals a day. Since they had nothing else to do, everyone had a bowl of porridge and 2 steamed buns to eat by themselves. It's the nearest ferry port. With this speed, we'll probably arrive at noon, the little stoic said expressionlessly to everyone. I wonder how young Master Long and the others are doing now? Feng Zhangfei took a bite of the bun and suddenly asked, by the way, did it rain last night? It rained for most of the night, but the rain wasn't heavy. However, if young Master Long and the others rode the flying bat, it probably wouldn't be very comfortable, Feng Zhangqing said faintly. Mu Xingchen couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Clan leader Feng's words were too fucking subtle. What wouldn't it be very comfortable? It would simply be extremely unlucky, alright? It was now August, and the weather was abnormally hot. The river breeze brushed their faces, but it felt stuffy and hot. Chapter 4264. Although it was only 7 in the morning when the sun rose, heat radiated in all directions, and the temperature of the river rose a lot. The little crown princess pulled out 4 water spirit talismans from her pocket with a wooden expression. With a flip of her hand, a stream of water appeared in her palm. In a few minutes, the water condensed into ice, and a large block of ice as tall as a person fell beside her. After continuously creating 4 large blocks of ice, the little crown princess silently slapped the water spirit talismans in her hand into the ice block, keeping it in a frozen state. Then she summoned 4 golems and had them fan themselves. Mu Xingchen's mouth twitched. Sitting beside the little crown princess, he felt a cool breeze blow over, and the stuffy feeling dissipated a lot. His sister really knew how to enjoy life. Arbor took out spirit tea from his inner world and poured a cup for his brother. Then he heard a phoenix call out, It's young Lord Long and the others. Feng Zhangqing and Feng Zhangfei hurriedly walked to the railing and looked up. In the vast river, a group of dozens of people stood on wooden planks in a somewhat disheveled state, drifting with the waves. Mu Xingchen sipped his tea. Before he could speak, he heard Feng Zhangfei yell, Damn, they look a little miserable. How could Long Shi's group be described as miserable? After parting with the little crown princess and the others in a panic yesterday, Long Shi's group rode on the flying bat. After getting rid of the zither-playing corpse puppet and tossing that thing to Arbor and the others, Long Shi and his sister thought that they were going to start getting lucky. In the end, it started raining in the middle of the night, and the pitter-patter never stopped. They couldn't keep using their spirit power to evaporate the moisture on their bodies. If they continued to evaporate, if they encountered any danger and used up all their spirit power, they really wouldn't be able to do anything. Therefore, the group endured the rain and reluctantly took out some clothes from their inner worlds to cover their heads. In the end, after a night of torment, the flying bat couldn't take it anymore because it was carrying hundreds of people and flying for so long without stopping. Long Shangyun could only take it back. Fortunately, young Master Long had the foresight to store many wooden planks in his inner world. Now that they were tossed out, everyone could at least stand on the wooden planks and float with the current for a short distance. They planned to wait for the flying bats to rest for a while before continuing to fly. What a tragic life. There were so many people on this trip, but only the second miss had a flying spirit beast. Long Huan also had a flying spirit artifact, but it was very small and could only carry 2 people. He didn't want to abandon his clansmen and take his sister away. He still wanted to save face. Fortunately, they weren't too far away from the ferry. At most, they would just have to float for another 4 to 6 hours. They should be able to reach the ferry before evening. He was worried about Arbor and the others. It had been a long time since the little crown princess and the others came. Long Huan was worried that the little crown princess would return to the capital in anger. "Young master, look, there's a ship, there's a ship." Just as he was hesitating, a member of the dragon clan shouted. Long Shangyun's spirit was roused. She looked up and immediately waved her hand at the distant 3-story ship. "Here, hey, over here." Long Huan hurriedly shouted, "Take off, let's fly over and take a look." Mo Lien raised her brows with a half-smile. "Wife, they seem to have seen us. How could they not see such a big ship unless they were blind?" Everyone couldn't help but grumble in their hearts. They calmly turned to look. Chapter 4265. There was a ship. A 3-story ship was right in front of them. "Everyone, don't rush to be the first." Long Qian forced himself to remain calm and turned to warn Long Shangyun. "Shangyun, you must remember not to be impetuous. Follow me over to take a look." After saying this, he rose into the air with everyone. As he left, Long Qian didn't forget to put away those wooden planks again in case of an emergency. "Don't worry, big brother." Long Shangyun pursed her lips disapprovingly. Everyone was extremely exhausted from the bumpy journey. Now that they saw a large ship appear in front of them, their moods were naturally more agitated. Long Qian led the Forget River Dragon clan members to the side of the ship. He cupped his fists in salute and said in a clear voice, "Friend, we are..." His eyes landed on the little stoic at the side of the table. Long Qian and the others were instantly stupefied. Feng Zhangfei was leaning against the railing. When he saw Long Qian leading people over, he waved his hand at the Dragon Clan members with a resplendent smile. "Young Master Long, I trust you have been well since we last met?" Long Qian glanced at Feng Zhangfei dumbly. He opened his mouth but couldn't speak for a long time. Long Shangyun and the others were also stupefied, as though they had been punched in the face. Yes, were their eyes playing tricks on them or what? Why did the stoic-faced crown princess and the others look so comfortable and contented? Where did this magnificent 3-story ship come from? Could it be that they had already stayed on this ship and spent the night comfortably since last night? After Long Qian's expression changed several times, he finally stabilized his emotions with great difficulty and forced out a smile that was uglier than crying at Feng Zhangfei. "Young Master Feng, you guys? What is this ship?" "Young Master, there are so many mechanical people on this ship, and even the one manning the helm is a mechanical person?" One of the Forget River Dragon clan members exclaimed in shock. Could it be the legendary Crimson Firmament Wave? Long Qian's eyes abruptly widened as he carefully sized up the large ship in disbelief. Long Shangyun was so shocked that she lost her voice and couldn't utter a word for a long time. Crimson Firmament Wave? The legendary sacred weapon Crimson Firmament Wave ship was actually right in front of them right now? Impossible. Could it be that you're overthinking it? Long Shangyun could not help but shout out. She would never believe that the little crown princess actually had a sacred weapon like the Scarlet Firmament Blue Wave. Impossible. Impossible. Long Shangyun glared at the little stoic and tugged at her eldest brother's sleeve. Long she nodded slightly and led Long Shangyun and the remaining 70 or so clansmen towards the deck. Boom. With a flash of light, the Scarlet Firmament Blue Waves, a large-scale defensive saint artifact, let everyone witness its power. Long Huan and the others were all blocked by the light released by the red Firmament Blue Waves. They looked at each other in confusion. "Cousin, can you let us come up first?" Arbor looked at Long Hua with a troubled expression. "The holy artifact has a spirit. If the red Firmament Blue Wave doesn't allow you to come up, there's nothing I can do." Long Shangyun's pretty face twisted slightly. "Who are you trying to fool? Aren't you its master? Won't it be fine if you remove its external defense so that it doesn't block us?" Arbor blinked and glanced at her before directly refusing. What do you know? The holy artifact has a spirit and has its own thoughts. It's not something the master can control at will. You indeed don't understand since you don't have a holy artifact. Arbor shook his head at Long Shangyun. Chapter 4266. Long Shangyun nearly vomited blood from anger. Upon seeing this, Long Qian silently pulled Long Shangyun to his side and looked at that stoic face in despair. Although this child didn't have any expression at all at this moment, Long Qian saw the word mischievous on Sir Jojo's small face. Continuing to be mischievous with a wooden face truly made people feel very helpless. Cousin, tell me, what do you want? Long Shangyun turned to look at her elder brother, Long Qian, as if she had seen a ghost. What did elder brother mean by this? Could it be that they still had to pay for a boat ride? They were truly crazy. The boat fare is 1 million spirit coins per person, Arbor said expressionlessly. The boat will arrive at the next ferry. After that, you will have to pay for a bigger boat that's more reliable. Don't let it break down after half a day at sea. At that time I'm afraid you won't be able to afford the rest of the expensive boat fare. Long Qian already knew how much of a scammer the little crown princess was, but he still underestimated how much of a scammer this stoic face was. He really wanted to cry. Cousin, can you? The little crown princess waved her hand. I'll give you a discount. There are more than 70 people here, so I'll round it off and you'll pay 70 million spirit coins. You might as well rob me. Long Shangyun couldn't resist cursing loudly. The little stoic glanced at her disdainfully. You're so poor from head to toe. What do you have for me to rob you of? This disdainful gaze and disdainful tone made Long Shangyun so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Long Qian gritted his teeth and agreed. Didn't the little crown princess like money? Then he would give her money. As long as it could improve their relationship, he wouldn't hesitate to give her more money. However, cousin, I don't have that much cash on me. Can you sign an IOU? When we return to River of Forgetfulness, I'll definitely give you the full amount. After saying this, Long Qian immediately realized that his cousin was looking at him with even more disdain. You're too poor. Arbor shook his head. His serious expression of disgust made Feng Zhangqing and the others twitch their mouths. All right then, Arbor sighed. Since we're on the same road, I can't just leave you in the lurch. Unlike you guys, you immediately fled on your flying bats the moment you saw the zombies. The Long siblings' faces alternated between green, white, and red. After the little stoic scolded them, they waved their hands and opened Qishao Canglong's defensive barrier. Long Huan and the others finally let out a sigh of relief. They quickly went through the gap in the shield and landed on the deck. After a night of torment, Long Huan and the other poor people all looked pale. They were very unlucky. Arbor looked at them and took out a brush and ink from his inner world. Young Master Long, please. Long Huan took a deep breath and quickly signed an IOU and handed it to Arbor. Then, he looked around the interior of Red Nimbus Blue Waves. This deck was more than 3 times wider than their previous ship. Not only was it spacious, but it was also fully furnished with tables, chairs, cups, and plates. More than 100 Feng clansmen sat in groups of 2s and 3s at their respective small tables, drinking tea and munching on melon seeds. Pairs of eyes looked at them curiously. Why the fuck did they look like they deserved a beating after Long Huan landed? He discovered that there were 4 ice walls erected around his cousin. There were 7 to 8 golems fanning themselves on the side. No wonder the cool breeze blew over. On the small table in front of them were tea, snacks, and a few servings of fresh-looking fruits. Long Huan felt a headache coming on, and his eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Chapter 4267. Why does this guy look like he needs to be taught a lesson? Cousin, this scarlet firmament blue wave is? Oh, you were running too fast. I didn't have time to call you. Arbor said indifferently, this scarlet firmament blue wave was given to me by an elder in Shuntian Prefecture. I don't use it often, so I often forget about it. Xiao Mu's words caused the Long siblings' chests to hurt from choking. They were sure that this guy did it on purpose. Things like not using it often and not being able to remember it were all excuses. She had purposely waited for them to leave on the flying bat before she slowly took out this sacred artifact and placed everyone inside. Long Shangyun pursed her lips and whispered, "He's just watching us make a fool of ourselves." Long Huan tugged at her sleeve, and Long Shangyun shut her mouth in embarrassment. "Young Master Long, I think you guys are tired." Mu Xingchen stood up and said, "I'll bring you guys to the rooms on the second floor to rest." Long Shi immediately looked at Mu Xingchen with a wary gaze. How could they be so kind? "Don't worry, 1,000,000 spirit coins is enough to cover food and lodging." Mu Xingchen explained and gestured for them to enter. Long Shi heaved a sigh of relief. That's right, when the little crown princess asked them for a sky-high price, she did say that the fairy fare was 1,000,000 spirit coins, but she didn't say anything about food and lodging. Long Shi and his sister followed Mu Xingchen to the second floor. Only then did they realize that there were many rooms on the second floor. From the outside, the scarlet firmament blue wave looked like a 3-story ship that was slightly bigger than a normal ship. But when they got closer, they realized that the cabin seemed to stretch on endlessly. As they walked along the corridor, they seemed to have passed by dozens of rooms, but they still couldn't see the end of the cabin. As expected of a sacred weapon, Long Shi was speechless. It seemed that the space on this ship was completely different from the outside world. "Big brother, is there something wrong with the space here?" This is the sacred weapon space. It looks no different from a normal ship from the outside, but when you enter, you realize that it's a completely different world. Mu Xingchen stood still and pointed to the rooms behind. "The rooms in front are all occupied by us. You guys can do whatever you want in the back." Long Shangyun hurriedly opened the door to one of the rooms. After closing the door, she went to open another one. Mu Xingchen said faintly, "Miss Long, the furnishings in the room are exactly the same. There's no need to be picky." The reason he brought them here was to prevent them from entering the wrong room. "Thank you." Long Huan sincerely thanked Mu Xingchen. Then he let his younger sister choose a room to enter while he chose the one opposite. The other members of the Dragon Clan also went to choose their own rooms to wash up and rest. Mu Xingchen nodded at Long Yun. "Young Master Long, you've worked hard this time. I won't disturb you any further. If you want to eat, please come to the deck." "Thank you, cousin." Long Qi hurriedly cupped his hands and watched Mu Xingchen leave. He wasn't in a hurry to return to his room. Instead, he pushed open the door and walked in. Long Shangyun was touching everywhere with a curious look on her face. She touched the bedside table for a while, and then touched the lamp at the side. "These are all made of wood." Long Shangyun rolled onto the wooden bed and heaved a sigh of relief. Although there was no mattress or blanket and it felt hard to sleep, at least it was sheltered from the wind and rain. The room was warm and fragrant. It was much better than sleeping outside for a night. Chapter 4268. Who knows how much effort it took to create such a sacred weapon? Long Shi sighed. Who would have thought that his little cousin could get her hands on such a sacred weapon? She really was not an ordinary person. Long Shangyun sat up, curled her lips and complained in a low voice, "As the crown princess of the divine land, I don't believe that the divine land will shortchange her expenses." Even so, she still wanted to rob them of their spirit coins. This sacred weapon must be a treasure passed down from generation to generation. The crown prince must have given it to her to get on her good side. Long Shangyun twisted her sleeves and said angrily, "Enough. The sacred weapon has already recognized its master. Even if you get it, you can't use it." Long Shi did not covet the scarlet firmament wave. As the young master of the River of Forgetfulness, he grew up in the River of Forgetfulness. The River of Forgetfulness mystic realm was huge. Naturally, he knew how many treasures the River of Forgetfulness Dragon Clan had. Snow Ridge Sacred Ground, River of Forgetfulness Cold Valley, Sacrificial Sea Abyss. It was said that they all had extremely deep and vast mystic realms. They were on par with the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. After so many years, the River of Forgetfulness people could only step into the outermost area of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. They could not even enter a little. One could imagine how many secrets were hidden there. How could there be fewer treasures? Hence, he did not need to be jealous of the sacred weapons in his cousin's hands. because once he inherited the River of Forgetfulness, he would have as many sacred weapons as his cousin. Alright, don't think too much. Long Shi comforted his sister. The Scarlet Firmament wave is very fast. It will probably reach the harbor in 2 hours. We will make plans when we get there. Do we really have to buy another ship? Long Shangyun was angry. That woman had the Scarlet Firmament wave? Why would she not use such a useful sacred weapon? She even wanted her brother to buy another ship to return to the River of Forgetfulness. That was too extravagant and immature. Long Shi laughed bitterly. We can't afford the Scarlet Firmament wave. 2 hours is 1,000,000 spirit coins per person. How much do you think we have to pay to return to the River of Forgetfulness? Long Shangyun couldn't help but shudder. Such a huge expenditure was enough to buy 100 luxurious ships. The brother and sister chatted for a while and complained about Arbor before they went to rest. Sure enough, at noon, Scarlet Firmament blue waves sailed into the nearby port. Arbor got everyone to pack up and go ashore. He took out a sealing ball and put the huge ship back into the sealing ball. At this time, there were many ships and pedestrians coming and going from the port. Everyone was flabbergasted by Qiao Mu's extravagant setup. After all, watching a 3-story ship being sealed by a small transparent ball was simply an act of the gods to mortals. Qiao Mu was also quite helpless when she saw this. She naturally didn't want to be so high profile, but if she took out her storage talisman, it would be even more shocking. If Long Shi and his sister saw a storage talisman that could hold such a large ship, their jaws would probably drop in shock. Cousin Shangyun and I are going to buy a boat first. You can stroll around nearby. Arbor nodded calmly. Do as you wish. After the brother and sister left, Arbor tugged at her husband's hand. Let's find a tea house to sit for a while. Okay. This small city along the river was not big. Chapter 4269. After Sir Jojo gave a cursory glance at the trinkets for sale along the river, he lost interest in continuing to stroll around. Since that pair of siblings had gone to buy a boat, there was no point in strolling around idly here, so they might as well go to a nearby tea house. The group of more than 100 people followed behind the little crown princess and slowly walked toward the tea house. Along the way, they saw many young men and women selling along the river casting coquettish glances at the beautiful Phoenix youths. A bold tea servant actually jumped up and casually threw a flower in the crown prince's direction. Crown Prince Simo dodged to the side, and the little stoic vigilantly turned her head to look back. When the smitten young girls saw her gaze as cold as a knife, they instantly shrunk back. Ridiculous! Everyone only heard the little stoic turn her head and mutter quietly, "Why are you littering?" Everyone, the corner of Mu Xingqian's eyes twitched. The group of more than 100 people followed the little stoic girl up to the second floor of the tea house. This tea house beside the small harbor was rather spacious, and they occupied more than a dozen tables, so it didn't seem especially crowded. Say, do you think Long Huan and his sister can find a good boat? I think it's unlikely. Mu Xingqian was the first to express his opinion. He shook his head and said, even we aren't familiar with this small harbor city, let alone 2 people from Forget River. Even if they can buy a boat, they'll probably be ruthlessly scammed in such a hurry. Oh! The little stoic took out a teapot of spiritual tea and handed it to her husband. Mo Lien naturally took it and poured a cup of tea for his wife. He casually said, if they casually buy a boat, it won't work once it enters the sea. At that time, will we still need to use the red firmament waves to ferry them? We'll ferry them if they pay. Arbor thought about it and said, is Forget River very poor? Mu Xingqian couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Why do you say that, younger sister? I think Long Huan seems very poor. Arbor looked disdainful. He's the grand young master of Forget River, yet he only has those few spirit coins in his pocket. He's also stingy and unwilling to pay with spirit stones and divine stones. Why did he have to pay on credit? I really feel sad for him. What young master? I think the streets are filled with people who are richer than him. Everyone was speechless. In this world, there were really not many who could be richer than young Lord Long. It's not that Long Yun is poor, it's just that he's been squeezed too badly by you, okay? Feng Zhangqing drank his tea silently. The corner of Feng Zhangfei's mouth twitched. A phoenix youth nodded and said, "The saintess is right. That Long Huan is too petty." Feng Zhangfei. These children of the Phoenix clan had all been brainwashed by Grand Elder Feng Ping and the two consecrators. Now, they were all calling her saintess. They had all become Lord Jojo's diehard fans. Waves of faint fragrance spread out. Everyone's line of sight inadvertently looked towards the stairs, only to see a group of more than 10 people slowly walking up the stairs. All of them were handsome men with red lips and white teeth. Along the way, they attracted the screams of countless infatuated young girls. Those bold tea maidens directly followed them, letting out infatuated giggles along the way. They chattered noisily in a flock of orioles and swallows. Arbor swept a glance over, but before she could make out anything, the other party already cried out in pleasant surprise, "Little Stoic, it's you?" The little Stoic glanced at them expressionlessly before hastily turning her head to look at her husband. As expected, her husband's handsome face had already darkened. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. They were the 7 flowers that filled the air with spring. Chapter 4270. Truly, it was a small world. The little Stoic thought this in her heart, but she put on a, "I'm not very familiar with you guys," expression. She sat upright and still, but there wasn't a trace of a smile on her Stoic face. So what if she didn't smile? In any case, everyone was already used to her expressionless face. This didn't dampen the enthusiasm of the 7 flowers to greet her. Red ran over first with a grin and enthusiastically shook the little Stoic's hand. "Stoic face, are you also going to participate in the Beauty Appreciation Conference?" Without batting an eyelid, Mo Lien raised an arm to block the beautiful man in red's claw. The beautiful man in red felt like he had touched an iron plate and resentfully retracted his hand. He glared at Mo Lien several times before turning to continue conversing with the little Stoic. "Isn't that right? What Beauty Appreciation Conference?" The little Stoic originally didn't want to pay attention to this person, but out of curiosity, she still answered. Elvie floated over and glanced at Sir Jojo resentfully. "Stoic, why did you run away so quickly last time at the springtime conference? I didn't even have time to talk to you." The little girl's survival instinct was extremely strong. She turned back to glance at Mo Lien and immediately shifted her stool closer to her husband. "I don't know what you're talking about. What springtime conference? Stop pretending." Red and Elvie waved their hands at the same time. "That day, you saved our Meng Meng. We didn't even have time to thank you before you jumped out the window and ran away like a rabbit." Arbor, "Heh, this lord ran away? You're spouting nonsense." Mu Xingchen choked on his tea and stood up. "Does everyone know my sister? Why don't you take a seat first?" You're the Stoic face's big brother." "Hello, big brother." "Big brother, I'm Laning." Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple surrounded him and started talking at once. "Who's your big brother?" Mo Lien's expression darkened, and his handsome face was about to explode. "Meng Meng, let's sit. Ignore him." Red pulled Fan Meng and dragged a stool to sit next to the little Stoic. "Facial paralysis, are you going to attend the Beauty Appreciation Conference?" "I'm asking you about the Beauty Appreciation Conference." Arbor asked impatiently. "You don't know?" Hong Yi asked curiously. "The Empress of the Fallen Beauty Kingdom has invited all the beautiful men in the world to attend the Beauty Appreciation Conference." Speaking of which, the ancestor of this devastating female kingdom seems to have some relationship with your Mu clan. I don't know if you've heard that among the ancestors of your Mu clan, there's someone called Madame Qingqing? Xiao Mu abruptly turned her head and gazed icily at that red-clothed man who was rambling on incessantly. Seeing that his voice was getting softer and softer, she involuntarily paused and stammered, What is it? Do you know who I am?" Arbor's eyes were like water, but they were extremely cold as he stared straight at the beautiful man in red. The other party's heart was pounding and he couldn't help but stutter again, Yes, investigate me?" Arbor looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "I don't think I've ever told you who I am." During their most recent contact, she only told Fan Yu that her surname was Qiao. Someone from the heavenly fate? A blue spark suddenly jumped out of Arbor's hand. Isn't that right? What heavenly fate? The red-clothed man exclaimed in fright and hastily hid behind Fan Meng. State your objective. Otherwise, all of you will stay here. Chapter 4271. As soon as she finished speaking, the 7 flowers all started sobbing. No motive. What motive could there be? Little stoic, you're hurting our hearts too much like this. Look at us, we're all people without the strength to trust a chicken. What motive could we possibly have towards you? Wah wah. And here I thought we could become good friends. I didn't expect you to guard against us like this. Arbor had never seen such a scene before. A group of men surrounded her and started sobbing, looking very broken-hearted. The Duan Yu, Omega Kotoku, and Ming Yasi she encountered before, even if she dragged them around and beat them up, killed their souls with arrows, and fed them poison and medicine, they still wouldn't sob at her. Was it because the world was unpredictable, or did she encounter a group of oddballs? The little stoic blinked as she held a sparkling blue flame, suddenly at a loss for what to do. Faced with a group of sobbing men, the little stoic expressed that what could she do? To be honest, she really didn't want to waste her breath on a matter that could be resolved with her fists. Moreover, she still had to face a group of love-struck women's accusation and contempt, plus their resentful and indignant gazes. It was as if she had done something extremely tragic to coerce these handsome young men from good families. Arbor instantly felt mentally and physically exhausted. Feng Changqing couldn't resist twitching his mouth. This was also their first time seeing a large group of handsome men sobbing. When Mu Xingchen saw the little stoic standing there stiffly, seemingly at a loss for words as she held the blue spiritual cleansing flame, he quickly jumped out to put out the fire and smooth things over. Lightly patting his sister's small hand, Mu Xingchen quickly reached out to help her extinguish the blue spiritual cleansing flame. Sister, I see that these sirs have no cultivation at all, so they shouldn't be related to the heavenly providence. Cough, cough, cough. What Mu Xingchen didn't say was, how could they be people of the heavenly providence when they looked so weak that they could be blown away by a gust of wind and run away with a kick? It didn't match their image at all. The little stoic lowered her eyes and put down her small hand, glancing at them suspiciously. She had always believed in her intuition and felt that there was something wrong with the 7 flowers. The beautiful man in red wiped his tears and said pitifully, Wu, we did investigate Miss Qiao, but we only wanted to know who you were. LVE continued to whine, yes, we just want to be friends with you. I've never thought of harming you, stoic-faced young lady. Stop crying, or I'll poison you all into mutes, Arbor said expressionlessly. Everyone was speechless. The little stoic's words put an end to the sobbing sounds everywhere. As expected, the 7 flowers didn't dare to carelessly sob in front of the little stoic. Miss Qiao, who was getting a headache from the sobbing, only relaxed when she saw that they had all shut up. With a cold expression, she said, Come here. Her little finger pointed at Fan Meng, who was being carried by Red Shirt. Fan Meng widened her watery eyes and looked at her for a few seconds. Then, she moved her feet and obediently took a few steps forward. When Arbor saw this person's pitiful expression that resembled a little white rabbit, she inexplicably felt that she had been a bit fierce to them just now. After pressing down a dictum talisman with her small hand, Qiao Mu expressionlessly warned, Don't try anything funny. Fan Meng and the others repeatedly shook their heads, indicating that they didn't have any ill intentions toward the little lady. Although Arbor still felt that their actions were a bit suspicious, she didn't like to accuse people without evidence. Chapter 4272. Unless she could find concrete evidence, she would definitely slap them to death at that time. Before that, she didn't want to bully the weak and didn't like to cause trouble for no reason. What sense of accomplishment was there in bullying a bunch of pitiful people? Arbor thought about it and put away the dictum talisman for the time being. Then he glanced at Fan Meng and the others. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Hongyi couldn't help but lean forward and ask curiously, Miss Qiao, do you want to head to devastating female kingdom together? Prince Emo said coldly, "We aren't on the same side as you." The Crown Prince felt that these people were even more unpleasant to the eye than the Feng tribe. The Feng tribe treated his wife with a very normal attitude. At most, their dog-like eyes would flash with adoration. However, these 7 flowers were different. When they saw his wife, they were like cats that smelled fish and swarmed toward them without any explanation. They were extremely loathsome, instigating his wife to go to that whatever female kingdom? What were their intentions? Devastating female kingdom is pretty fun. I heard that it's the place that female cultivators like to stay the most. Right. Many female cultivators with powerful cultivations are rushing to join devastating female kingdom. But the little stoic really wanted to continue pulling a long face, but when she saw Hong Yi's smiling face, she inexplicably answered. Emolian, his wife was very curious. Many times, her train of thought would run away after being teased slightly. Hong Yi immediately continued to educate her in high spirits. Don't you know Jojo? As long as any female cultivator above the divine realm who enters devastating female kingdom swears allegiance to the queen, they will be conferred an official position. At the same time, they will be bestowed 3 to 5 beautiful husbands. What 3 to 5? I heard it's 7 to 8, Lu Yi quickly added. The surrounding flowers nodded in unison. Vichum. Fan Meng tugged at Hong Yi, who was rambling nonstop. Hong Yi, don't be so rude in front of Jojo. Mu Xingchen quickly turned around to look at his brother-in-law's expression. As expected, that handsome face was already on the verge of exploding. How could these flower buds, who lacked the strength to truss a chicken, dare to crazily test Emolien's bottom line in front of him? Mu Xingchen was about to say something to smooth things over again. However, he heard the little stoic ask coldly, "What use is it?" Hong Yi, Lu Yi, and the others didn't understand what little mushroom was talking about. What's the use of having 3, 5, 7, 8 beauties? The little stoic asked expressionlessly with a taut face. At this time, they were on the 2nd floor of the tea house. A large group of infatuated women who were watching the handsome young man were now blocking the entrance to the 2nd floor in a large circle. On the street below, the peddlers' cries and children's giggles could be heard very clearly. However, although there were over 100 people gathered in the tea room on the 2nd floor, it was completely silent at this moment. It was as if a pause button had been pressed on everyone, and everyone was suddenly mute. It wasn't just the red clothes and green clothes. They didn't know what to say to the little crown princess. Even Emolian couldn't resist twitching his mouth. He simply didn't know how to respond to his wife's question. What's the use of having 3, 5, 7, 8 beauties? What's the use? What's the use? This was a good question. Mu Xingchen couldn't resist raising his hand to cover his face. He quickly diverted this rather awkward topic. Chengfei, go out and take a look. Young Master Long and the others seem to have been gone for a long time. Why haven't they returned yet? Chapter 4273. Feng Zhangfei stood up and frowned slightly when he saw the love-struck women blocking the 2nd floor staircase. Just as he was about to walk over, he heard Long Huan's voice from behind the stairs. What is everyone blocking here for? Long Shangyun even bluntly shouted, move aside, all of you move aside. What are you doing? What are you looking at? Pushing aside those onlooking tea maidens, Long Shangyun walked up the stairs with her chin held high. As soon as she saw the little stoic sitting there unmoving like a mountain, she couldn't help but get angry. The boat has already been bought. It cost my brother a lot of money. We can set off after eating. Long Huan smiled at the little crown princess. Don't worry, cousin. Several boatmen have already inspected the boat and said there are no problems at all. There shouldn't be any accidents on this trip to the River of Forgetfulness. If there was an accident, they couldn't afford to ride the Crown Princess Scarlet Sky Waves. Looking at the situation, if it really didn't work, they could only mutate their merman tails first. However, it would be more troublesome than, speaking of which, after they mutated their merman tails, they couldn't return to their human forms in the short term. They would suffer a lot if they transacted with humans in their merman forms. That was why they didn't want to mutate in yesterday's situation, so they could only torment themselves along the way. Arbor uttered an "oh." There were now more than 200 people in the entire tea room on the second floor, but it fell silent again. Long Huan didn't know what to say to the crown princess and just stood there in a daze for a long time. He couldn't bear this silent atmosphere and finally couldn't resist laughing dryly. Crown Princess, in a few days, it will be devastating Female Kingdom's annual Queen's birthday. It will be grand, and there will be many people attending the birthday celebration. Do you want to go? If you want to go, this older brother can accompany you on this trip. Red Shirt and Green Shirt's eyes lit up simultaneously, wishing for nothing more than to go up and tug on the little stoic sleeve. Small sparks flickered in their eyes. Jojo, why don't we go together? It's indeed very fun. Arbor looked meaningfully at Long Huan. The latter's hair stood on end when she looked at him. At the same time, he couldn't help but shudder. Before the little stoic could open her mouth with ill intentions, Long Huan hastily raised his hand and said, "Younger cousin, stop your strange thoughts. I'm not someone who likes men. I'm not here to look at handsome men. I'm just looking at you. If you want to go and take a look, then let's go. In any case, Qingqing Womanland will also pass by when the time comes. It won't delay our journey back to the River of Forgetfulness. But if you don't want to go, then forget it." Long Shi explained quickly, causing Mu Xingqian to glance at him speechlessly. Arbor was just about to speak when he heard Qiuqiu's cute voice in his mind. Master Silver, don't reject him yet. I think the country this person is talking about might have my fragment." Arbor raised his eyebrows and used his soul consciousness to communicate. "How did you know? You can sense it even though it's so far away? Master Silver, you don't know, but I've already assimilated 5 tree fragments and am only 2 steps away from completely restoring my soul. My 5 senses can now cover a radius of 5,000 kilometers around Master. Not only have my 5 senses strengthened, but I also seem to have formed a tacit connection with the remaining 2 tree fragments." When that person said devastating Female Kingdom, Qiuqiu felt something stir in my heart. Chapter 4274. Master, do you understand? It's that feeling when your heart is stirred and you feel slightly fettered, like your heart is stirred. Master, let's go take a look. Qiuqiu's ghostly howls made Arbor's head hurt. What the fuck? Stirred, do you even know how to use words? When Arbor completely returned to her senses, she saw that the surroundings were dead silent, and everyone was uniformly staring at her. Emo Lien raised his hand to pull her back. He raised a brow and asked softly, "What's wrong? Is Qiuqiu talking to you?" Sir Jojo nodded at him and then said to Long Huan, "All right." Long Huan was momentarily at a loss. What do you mean all right? Mu Xingqian couldn't resist rolling his eyes at him. Younger sister said, "All right, let's just make a trip to that devastating women's kingdom." Emo Lien hastily lowered his head to look at his wife, his gaze slightly puzzled. He understood his wife very well. With her pragmatic personality, there must be something in devastating women's kingdom that attracted her. Otherwise, she wouldn't bother to join in on such a large-scale event. Arbor secretly pulled his hand over and drew the word tree on his palm. Emo Lien instantly understood and nodded slightly at her. Devastating Women's Kingdom had tree seed fragments? The group had a simple lunch and headed downstairs toward the harbor. "Jojo, do you want to come and sit on our boat?" 7 Flowers enthusiastically invited the little stoic. The latter glanced at them expressionlessly. "No need." "Then, Jojo, if you run into any trouble on the way, remember to find us. We will definitely help." The group of handsome young men chattered as they bade farewell to Arbor and headed to their own boat. Lady Xiqiao raised her hand to press on her aching head, then followed Long Huan's footsteps. "Women are respected in devastating Women's Kingdom. You must not act rashly when you go there." Young Master Long didn't forget to educate the Phoenix tribe members on the way. This country isn't that big. It has 3 islands and 16 fishing villages. However, the behavior of the women there is extremely valiant. This is especially true for some of the fishing villages far away from Qingqing Island. Some of the local women are uncivilized. That's why you have to be careful when you go there. Remember to cover your faces. As Long Huan spoke, he took out a black cloth from his inner world and handed it to his subordinate to distribute to everyone. When the time comes, everyone has to be blindfolded. Except for women. Why? Arbor asked in confusion. Long Shangyun couldn't help but sneer. I've already said that the women of devastating beauty country are the most respected. Pretty boys like them. Long Shangyun pointed at Feng Zhangqing and the others. She crossed her arms and snorted. Walking on the street, it's easy to be robbed. Arbor was furious. Who dares? The phoenixes nodded repeatedly and said, we will only serve the saintess for the rest of our lives. We swear that we will never obey anyone else. Arbor, strange, her husband's face darkened even more. She really wanted to turn back and tell the phoenixes, you can't listen to Feng Heping. Don't be brainwashed by Feng Heping and the two high consecrators. However, Mo Lien was very angry. She grabbed her little hand and pulled her away without another word. Sigh, a man's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. It seems that Sir Jojo needs to comfort him. When will her husband grow up? It's so worrying. I'm sleepy, I'll catch up on my sleep tomorrow. Chapter 4275. After the ship had sailed some distance away from the ferry, Arbor realized that the ship Seven Flowers was on was steadily sailing in front of them, braving the wind and waves with great momentum. The sound of a guqin and singing came from afar. It seemed that Seven Flowers and the others were in the mood to play the guqin on the ship. I don't know why, but whenever I hear the guqin music, I get goosebumps. Long Huan, who was standing in front of the deck against the wind, couldn't help but shiver and reach out to rub his arms. After being attacked by the zither-playing corpse puppet twice in a row, Long Huan's heart was traumatized. Arbor didn't feel much. He just turned to Long Huan and said, don't let your guard down for the next few days. If that cultured corpse puppet has the guts to come once or twice, it can come a third or fourth time until the sneak attack is complete. That corpse puppet is so persistent. What exactly is it after? Arbor couldn't help but sneer. Of course, it's because someone has their eye on me. Eye on you? Long Shangyun couldn't help but interrupt. Who has their eye on you? Arbor couldn't be bothered with her at first, but the siblings were looking at him strangely. Isn't it normal to have their eye on Jojo? Mo Lien said dryly, I thought that young Master Long had thoroughly investigated Xiao Qiao's matters, including the irreversible mortal enmity between us and Tianyun. You mean to say that the zither-playing corpse puppet was actually targeting Xiaomu? Long Shangyun immediately revealed her discontent. Then why did it attack them? You think that corpse puppet is smart enough to distinguish our relationship? Mu Xingchen sneered. You're traveling with us. In the corpse puppet's eyes, you're all its enemies. But Long Shangyun couldn't help but be angry. That lousy corpse puppet had been targeting the Wangchuan Dragon Clan since the beginning, making her think that these people were the Wangchuan Dragon Clan's enemies. After all this time, it turned out that they were here to attack the little crown princess. Weren't they too stupid to know who they were attacking? Long Shangyun took a deep breath. Tianyun will still send people? Arbor turned around and left with an innocent look on his face. How would I know? Miss you should know now, right? Even if you can summon half of the corpse fish in the river with just one special class corpse puppet, you might not be able to defeat that little crown princess. Mu Rochuan stood by the window and gazed at the rolling river in the distance. She said in a deep voice, tonight, we'll be entering the sea. Er's expression turned a little ugly. Eldest miss, do you have any better way to deal with this matter? That special-grade corpse puppet can only summon its subordinates within a radius of 500 miles. Any further and its voice won't have any effect on others. Mu Rochuan's voice was indifferent as she said, you've already let him out twice, but he didn't succeed even once. Er's expression turned even uglier. Then what do you think we should do? None of Mother's methods will work. Mu Rochuan shook her head. Based on my understanding of her, she's definitely on guard against you all right now. Once you let 16 go, he'll definitely be captured by her. 16 won't be able to survive. You and I, all of us, won't be able to survive. He couldn't help but be furious. Eldest miss, you've said so much. Are you trying to retreat? Mu Rochuan sighed softly. Chapter 4276. You're too impatient. Mu Rochuan put down the letter in her hand. She had read this letter from her mother so many times that she could already recite it backwards. She had studied all of her mother's plans once, but the results were very low. Especially if they attacked at sea, it was simply courting death. With the young crown prince consort's vigilance, you want to succeed in a sneak attack on this vast land with no cover on the sea? It was probably wishful thinking. I've sorted out my mother's plans. You should all stop for a while. When we reach the river of forgetfulness, we'll think of a way to attack. Eldest Mississippi, Miss if you think my method is inappropriate, we can work separately. Frowned and glanced at Mu Rochuan. Her gaze fell on the left side of her face. That ugly centipede scar was very conspicuous. No girl who loved beauty could stand it. However, Mu Rochuan endured it. She had never even asked the hall master for a beautifying pill. Believed that as long as Mu Rochuan was willing to ask, the hall master would not be stingy with giving it to her. What was the reason that made the eldest miss of the Mu family not even care about her appearance now? Was there anything else she cared about? The frown deepened. If a person did not have any weaknesses, then it was really difficult to control them, because the uncertain factors were too high. He took a deep look at Mu Rochuan, then turned and walked out. 3 days later, Long Huan stood on the deck and looked at a dilapidated small fishing village in the distance. From where they were, they could see many stiff-looking things walking around on the beach by the sea. How did this place become like this? Long Shangyun clenched her fists, and a trace of disdain appeared on her face. It spread so quickly. Long Huan sighed and looked at the things walking and stopping on the beach. He shook his head and said, if it continues like this, it will spread to the vicinity of the river of forgetfulness one day. If you continue to let it go, won't it be a matter of time before it spreads? Mu Xingchen could not help but sneer. Arbers sat at the table and drank tea. He was too lazy to even bat an eyelid. In the past 3 days, the ship's journey had been quite stable. Only yesterday evening, they had encountered a large corpse shark, which had been taken care of by the joint efforts of everyone. Nothing else had happened. Some of the creatures in the sea had already mutated. Big Brother was right. If they regularly sent people out to sea to clean up the mutant fish, the situation could be controlled to a certain extent. Unlike now, where everyone in that village had mutated because they had eaten something that mutated. You make it sound easy, but how much manpower and resources would it take to truly control it? Long Shangyun couldn't help but angrily rebuke Mu Xingchen. Mu Xingchen couldn't help but roll his eyes. So this is the reason why you're not doing anything? These villages that live by the sea will probably mutate like this village soon. Long Shangyun raised her chin proudly. Even if all these foolish fishermen die, the river of forgetfulness will still stand. Where we live, you humans on the shore can't even imagine it. You can't even come into contact with it. Mu Xingchen raised his eyebrows non-committally and did not continue arguing with her. After traveling for another half a day, 3 beautiful islands appeared before everyone's eyes. Let's continue at nights. Chapter 4277. There were many ships queuing up to enter the port. Long Huan's ship was behind a large fleet of ships. Looking at the situation, it would take at least an hour for them to enter the port. After about 15 minutes, Long Huan turned to look in Mu Xingchen's direction. Is cousin still resting? It's about time. Let her wake up. For the past few days, Long Huan knew the little girl's routine. After lunch, it was time to sleep. She would dawdle for several hours and would only leave the cabin in the evening to meet people. How would Long Huan know that every time after lunch, the little girl would drag her husband back to Paradise Planet to play? Who would be happy to be on this ship day and night? Of course, it would be more comfortable to rest in the star domain and refine talismans and pills. Mu Xingchen glanced at Long Huan and said lightly, "Don't worry. Jojo will come out in a while. Long Shangyun snorted. Some people always dawdle out in the evening. We're about to reach the port, but no one will stay here to wait. Before Long Shangyun could say the word she, her voice trailed off. Her gaze turned to the railing on the second floor. A slender, moon-white figure slowly appeared by the side of the railing. Her soft hair was tied up into a bun that fell loosely to her waist. Her eyes were cold and her gaze was like snow. The little girl was dressed in a white robe with wide sleeves. She stood there coldly, as if there was only this patch of white in the world. It was eye-catching. Long Huan stared blankly until Long Shangyun tugged at his sleeve. Only then did he regain his senses. Arbor's figure had already disappeared from the railing on the second floor. Not long after, Long Huan noticed Prince Mo holding her hand. They walked down to the deck together. People from alluring female kingdom are more, straightforward. Long Huan considered his words and glanced at Feng Chongqing and the others. Cover yourselves with the black cloth I gave you earlier. Arbor said lightly, no need. It's not like they can't be seen. How can he think of covering their faces? Long Huan, why doesn't this person listen to advice? Cousin, I'm just thinking for you. Long Yun coughed lightly and said with a serious face, take them away from the ship. Let me tell you, I don't think you'll be able to walk out of this pier. I'm not trying to scare you. With a serious expression, Long Huan looked at the little stoic and advised earnestly, how about you just install talismans on them? Feng Zhangqing. Why are we being despised like this? The little stoic glanced at him. Why aren't you blindfolding yourself? Long Huan quickly pulled out a piece of black cloth from under his collar and covered his mouth from his nose to his mouth. The corner of Mu Xingqian's mouth twitched speechlessly. The little stoic looked at him, and the corners of her lips faintly curled up into a faintly discernible smile. Long Shi's appearance was extremely like a retard. Long Huan was taken aback, and his heart was touched. He had been traveling with this cousin of his for so many days, but he had never seen her smile from beginning to end. She would either roll her eyes at him or be expressionless most of the time. Today's faint smile was simply indescribable. It made people unable to take their eyes off her. It was as if the sun, moon, and stars were all blooming at the same time. Just now, the mountains and rivers in front of him had a strange feeling that they were brightening. Suddenly, Mo Lian's expressionless handsome face appeared in his line of sight, blocking the little girl's slender figure. Have you prepared the customs clearance documents? Chapter 4278. Long Qian hastily nodded. Everything has been prepared. I'll go handle the procedures later. Everyone, don't run around for now. The streets are more crowded before and after devastating female kingdom's queen's birthday. It's best if we don't get separated from the crowd. Later, we'll go to the island to find a good inn together. Long Qian was like an old father as he endlessly instructed everyone. That's right, you guys should also cover yourselves. Long Qian thought of something and took out 2 pieces of black cloth from his inner world, distributing them to the crown prince and Mu Xingqian. Hurry and cover yourselves. If you don't want to cause trouble for cousin, then listen to me. No need to cover ourselves. Arbor waved her small hand and said coldly with a wooden expression, there's nothing shameful about it. Don't tell me there's someone who dares to steal my husband and big brother in broad daylight? Long Shangyun rolled her eyes. Isn't it obvious? Do you think other people won't steal your man just because you look stoic? Let me tell you, I reckon that within a second after you disembark, the people around you will all be robbed. Arbor was instantly enraged. Who dares to rob? I think they're tired of living. Besides, her Feng clan's children were all extraordinarily skilled. It was simply baffling who could steal them. Hey, you better believe me. Have you heard that 2 fists are no match for 4 palms? You're standing on devastating female kingdom's territory right now and already out of your divine province's territory. What can you be so smug about? Do you think a bunch of people will pop out to help you fight if you yell, "Where are the crown princess's personal guards?" The little stoic glared at Long Shangyun, and the latter glared back at her, not to be outdone. All right. Long Qian hastily saved the situation to prevent his younger sister from getting beaten again. Actually, Shang Yun is also speaking the truth. Cousin, Sir Jojo waved her small hand. There's no need for the people around me to hide their identities. There's no need for that. Long Shangyun glared at her fiercely and rolled her eyes fiercely. She also ridiculed in her mind, obstinate and self-opinionated. Doesn't listen to other people's advice. Self-righteous. Talking to herself. He really wanted to beat up this stoic face in front of him. The sight of this stoic little face made his mood extremely uncomfortable. His rage points soared when Long Shi saw that the two of them were about to fight again. He quickly stood between them and raised his hand to block them. He laughed dryly and said, all right. Stop arguing. Then since cousin doesn't think there's a problem, then we won't wear the black cloth. It's just that everyone should try their best to stay together and not get separated. Why did Long Shi feel so tired? Previously, when he suggested to travel to the devastating beauty country, was his suggestion wrong? Long Huan covered his face with the black cloth, revealing only his eyes. After the ship docked, he was the first to disembark and greet the receptionist. The female official looked to be in her 30s and was dressed in a black military uniform. When she saw Feng Zhangqing and the others, her eyes lit up and her expression immediately warmed up. Are you all here to participate in the Queen's birthday celebration? When this female official saw Prince Mo next to Arbor, her eyes immediately became glued to him, and she smiled so widely that her chubby cheeks trembled. With everyone's looks, haha, it shouldn't be a problem for you to enter the top 10. Long Shi hastily handed over the customs clearance document. We're only here to visit the Queen's birthday celebration, not to participate in the competition. Chapter 4279. The female official took the document and stamped it, revealing a regretful expression. Is that so? Her gaze slid reluctantly over Mo Lian, Feng Changqing and the others. That's really too much of a pity. Long Huan trembled slightly. He took the customs clearance document from the female official and chuckled awkwardly. No, it's not a pity. Sir, please move aside. We're going to disembark. Oh. The female official led the others off the ship. Only then did Long Huan lead his clansmen, Feng Changqing, Mo Lian, and the others off the ship and onto the shore. A bustling crowd was in front of them. Long Huan's face was covered in black cloth, so he didn't attract much attention. However, Mo Lian, Feng Changqing, and Mu Xingchen had just stepped onto the shore when they were met with a wave of chatter. The onlooking women couldn't even walk now. They all squeezed to the front, their eyes wide as saucers as they stared at Mo Lian and the others. Long Shangyun, who was standing to the side and watching the show, couldn't help but frown when she saw his intoxicated appearance. She glared angrily in Arbor's direction, a trace of sullenness in her eyes. I already told them to cover their faces. Look at them now? They can't even walk anymore. Arbor. A familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind the crowd. Arbor looked in the direction of the voice and saw the crowd being pushed to the sides. A young woman walked out from the center. She was wearing a thin red muslin dress and a silk cloak. The woman was barefooted, and 2 jingling bells hung from her ankles. She was slowly walking toward her. A pair of clear eyes stared straight at her, her gaze never leaving her. I didn't expect to meet you here. The woman's gaze lightly swept over her. Crown Princess, you're busy. Don't tell me you don't remember me? Looking at the expressionless face in front of her, the woman curled her lips slightly. The Holy Virgin of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling. Arbor naturally did not have such a bad memory as Sikong Fuling had described. Moreover, she and this Sikong Fuling could be considered to have met many times. Of course, it was impossible for her to not remember this person. Sikong Fuling smiled as she raised her hand to tidy up a strand of hair at her temples. She said with a gratified expression, "Fortunately, I don't have to introduce myself anymore." Saintess. Meng Meiyu worriedly stepped forward. She really wanted to remind this holy maiden that the little stoic in front of her really wasn't an easy person to get along with. Yet, unexpectedly, Sikong Fuling suddenly summoned a long sword and stabbed it in the little stoic's direction without any explanation. But the crowd let out a long exclamation. The eyes of devastating female kingdom's onlookers lit up as they looked at Sikong Fuling, who had suddenly made a move to find fault. One of them couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha, I didn't expect it to be so lively when we just arrived at the port. Excuse me, may I ask what they are doing? Why did you start fighting as soon as you met? You really are ignorant and inexperienced. In our devastating female kingdom, you can only draw your sword if you want to steal her man." Another person said eagerly, "I'll also go and try later." What happened? Mu Xingchen and Prince Mo looked at each other in dismay, and black lines immediately appeared on their foreheads. This young lady can only accept the challenge, of course. I see. But speaking of which, since someone is challenging her, wouldn't she be a coward if she didn't accept the challenge? Chapter 4280. The moment Xiao Mu turned sideways to evade the sword cry, Sikong Fuling's second strike, which was accompanied by a sonic boom, reached her again. Arbor lowered her waist and leaned back. Her long sword flitted over her head, lifting a strand of hair from her temples. Her unhindered sword intent scattered in all directions, and half a strand of black hair drifted down the sword in Sikong Fuling's hand. Arbor's eyes abruptly suffused with chilliness. With a hum, she summoned Clap of Thunder from her conscious, and she held her sword horizontally to block Sikong Fuling's third slash. Arbor's voice seemed to emanate from the depths of hell and was endlessly chilling. "Sikong Fuling, you're courting death. After we parted in the Mystic Beast Forest, you saved my life, and I protected you for a night. We're even now." Arbor spun around to avoid Sikong Fuling's rippling sword energy. She held Clap of Thunder in her hand and blocked the attack. She said coldly, "When did I save your life? You naturally don't remember. How much do you remember from the Mystic Beast Forest? At that time, you lost all your senses, emotions, and desires. You don't have any memories." What? Mu Xingchen, Feng Changqing, and the others were startled. "What do you mean, lost all my senses? Why didn't they know about this?" The Crown Prince knitted his brows as he looked at Sikong Fuling, who suddenly launched an attack. He knew that something had happened to the little fellow in the Mystic Beast Forest, but the little one had always kept the specifics a secret from him. Seeing that she was unwilling to speak, he naturally didn't pursue the matter. In any case, she was already staying by his side, so the past was in the past. However, he didn't expect that his wifey would cross paths with the demonic sex saint in the Mystic Beast Forest. Nonsense. As usual, the little stoic refused to admit it. She stared icily at Sikong Fuling with a frosty expression. "Nonsense? Do you still remember how my big brother saved you? Of course you don't remember anything. You were under some kind of curse back then, right? That's why you lost all your senses. When I met you in the Mystic Beast Forest, you were blind and couldn't see anything. You were just like a massacre. Absurd. All of this is just your nonsense. When have I ever been blind?" A green vine drilled out of Arbor's wrist and whipped towards Sikong Fuling without hesitation. The onlookers couldn't help but gasp. However, Sikong Fuling leaped up and reached out to grab one end of her vine whip. The barbed dark hooks formed by the power of the holy wood pierced into her fair palm as quickly as they could. Drops of blood fell to the ground along with the vine whip. The surroundings were completely silent. "Do you dare to come with me to meet him?" Sikong Fuling looked at her coldly and asked. Arbor moved his lips and said with a stoic face, "Let go. Since you have no interest in him, why did you flirt with him? Do you know that you've harmed him?" Arbor was enraged as he glared at Sikong Fuling in bewilderment. "I'll tell you one more time. I have nothing to do with your big brother. Hey, miss. You're in the wrong here." A slender and quick-witted figure suddenly darted out of the crowd and bounced toward Arbor and Sikong Fuling. Her round face was solemn and dignified. When she reached Arbor, she reprimanded her. "Since you flirted with someone else's big brother, you have to take responsibility, right? As women, we have to take responsibility for our actions. We mustn't flirt and deny it. How are we any different from those heartless and fickle people?" Chapter 4281. Arbor couldn't help but be breathless. Where did this little lady jump out from? She looked young and was dressed in a wealthy manner. But the words that came out of her mouth were simply baffling to the extreme. What did she mean by she was heartless and fickle, flirting and refusing to admit it? Who did she flirt with? She didn't flirt with anyone, all right. What the hell was flirting? Who could explain it to her? Mu Xingchen looked at the chaotic situation in front of him and couldn't help but facepalm. He took a few steps forward and whispered, "This Miss Sikong, your hand is injured. Can you let go of it first?" Sikong Fulling glanced at him coldly. She tightly gripped the end of Arbor's vine whip and asked word by word, "Arbor, do you dare to enter my dream and try?" Arbor was startled, and he stared at her indifferently. A pitch-black flute was slowly summoned from Sikong Fulling's conscious. It floated horizontally in the air and slowly descended. Arbor's heart tightened slightly as he looked at this nightmare demonic flute. After a while, he merely gazed at that flute with an icy and merciless gaze. She recognized this frightening flute. The instant this nightmare demonic flute was blown, it would make her dream of bad people, bad things, and bad memories. For example, young Master Omega Kotoku. "Arbor, as long as you enter my dream and take a look, you'll definitely know what happened between you and my eldest brother." The onlookers held their breaths in anticipation, and their gazes fixated on the little stoic. Mo Lien suddenly flashed to his wife's side and supported her waist with one hand. She looked coldly at Sikong Fulling and said, "Don't force her anymore. She naturally won't enter her dream, because nothing happened between her and Ding Ting Ding." Sikong Fulling scoffed. "Is that so?" "Of course." Mo Lien glanced at Sikong Fulling with an icy expression. Sikong Fulling tightly gripped that vine whip. Everyone saw the drop of blood in her hand climb up the vine bit by bit, the color of blood rippling. The vine whip in Arbor's hand was stretched taut, just like her heartstrings. It was stretched perfectly straight and taut, as if it would explode at any moment. "Do you know Arbor? You've done him in. I've never seen him so miserable. He was used to being playful and unrestrained. But towards you, there has never been the slightest bit of pretense or false feelings." Sikong Fulling's eyes reddened as she fought back the tears that were about to fall. Recalling what she saw yesterday, her hand once again gripped the vine whip tightly, as if by doing so, she could grab hold of Arbor and bring her back to see that person. "Let go." Arbor flew into a rage and pulled back the vine whip in her hand. The power of the holy wood turned into fragments of starlight and gathered in her hand. "Miss, that's not right." The young lady who had scolded her earlier hurriedly said, "How can you treat his big brother like this? Aya, you can't forget the old just because you have a new person." "What and what?" Arbor glared angrily at the little girl who was spouting nonsense. Student Emolien also had black lines on her forehead and couldn't help but look up to glare at the young lady whose brain had gone haywire. Inexplicably, with just 3 sentences from this young lady, her proper husband had been reduced to a new lover? That young lady didn't care at all about other people's glares as she skipped over to Sikong Fulling's side and held up her hand. "Aya, you're so badly injured. Miss, I have medicine here. Apply it first." Sikong Fulling pulled back her hand and remained silent. The young lady ignored her and pulled Sikong Fulling to apply medicine to stop the bleeding. Chapter 4282. "I'm called Qing Shue, and you're called Sikong Fulling, right? Your injury is quite serious. If you don't apply medicine properly to remove the scars, you won't be able to see your hand in the future." That little girl was a naturally sociable fellow. She nagged incessantly as she applied medicine for Sikong Fulling. Sikong Fulling merely gazed wordlessly at the little stoic across from her. Qing Shue's gaze also looked in the young crown prince consort's direction. With a bitter expression, she hesitated for a long time before she spoke with a bit of joy. "This stoic young lady, you're truly very worrisome. As women, how can we be so heartless and callous towards beautiful and delicate men? This isn't right." The members of the Feng tribe looked at this little girl who was about the same age as Arbor as if they were looking at a weirdo. The corner of Mu Xingchen's mouth twitched slightly, and he selectively ignored the words, beautiful and delicate man that Qing Shueshue mentioned. Could it be that this devastating womanland, from the queen to her subjects, were all weirdos like this? Arbor ignored Qing Shueshue from beginning to end, making the girl faintly feel a sense of defeat. Arbor, you don't dare to enter the dream, so I naturally can't force you. Sikong Fuling looked at her and said indifferently, but when you were training in the Mystic Beast Forest that day, you lost all your senses and your memories. However, Qingwan has always been by your side, so he's aware of many things. You can summon him out and ask him. Arbor gazed at Sikong Fuling with extremely cold eyes, her fingers tightly gripping the thunderclap sword's hilt. She was trying her best to suppress the churning emotions in her heart, and she was about to suppress them to the limit. You came to see me today for this matter? In truth, Sikong Fuling wanted to find her last time in Phoenix Grove, but unfortunately she didn't encounter Arbor at all due to a freak combination of factors. Yes. Sikong Fuling nodded. If you're willing to come with me, before she could finish speaking, what answered her was the little stoic's merciless slash of her sword. The vast and mighty sword Aura bore down on Sikong Fuling. Everyone present jumped in fright. Many of the spectators of devastating womankind retreated like the tide. She looked on helplessly as the little stoic's sword fell, splitting open a foot-wide fissure in front of Sikong Fuling. Saintess! More than a dozen devil cult disciples rushed forward to support Sikong Fuling's retreating body. They all looked up in the direction of Arbor. Let's go! Arbor glanced at them coldly and reached out to tug at Emo Lien's sleeve. Without another word, he turned around and left with the group behind him. Hey, Auntie, who is this lady? Qing Shueshue chased after them for a few steps and then stopped. She looked regretfully at the people of Arbor and left without looking back. Sigh, is there no more fun to watch so soon? She turned to look in Sikong Fuling's direction and rolled her eyes. Just as she was about to walk towards Sikong Fuling, two travel-worn and sweaty women suddenly squeezed out from the crowd. The two of them hurriedly grabbed her hands and dragged her away. Your Highness, why are you here again? Quickly return, something happened in the estate. What's the fuss about? Qing Shueshue muttered quietly and obediently left with the two female officers. Meng Miu breathed a sigh of relief and walked to Sikong Fuling's side. She said sullenly, You were truly too impetuous just now. What do you know? Sikong Fuling swept her a glance with an indifferent expression. She can treat eldest brother's illness. Meng Miu was startled and then said, But the cult master is far away in the river of forgetfulness right now. Chapter 4283. Where do you think she's going this time? Sikong Fuling looked certain. She's heading for the river of forgetfulness. Meng Miu hesitated for a moment before saying gravely, Based on my understanding of her, I'm afraid no one can force her to do something she's unwilling to do. You also saw her attitude just now. She did her best to distance herself from them and didn't look like she would be enthusiastic about helping them. Sikong Fuling narrowed her eyes. That's why it's best if she owes us a favor. She understood this stoic face too well. As long as it was a debt of gratitude, the little stoic would definitely repay it. Because she disliked owing people favors the most and didn't give others the chance to owe her a favor. The most classic example was that she would usually settle the debt with the person and the goods. Meng Miu couldn't resist snickering. That girl is very crafty. How do you want her to owe you a favor? Since Arbor is going to the river of forgetfulness, why did she come here midway? Sikong Fuling turned to look at Meng Miu. She doesn't visit a temple without a cause. You mean, she didn't come to attend the queen's birthday celebration? Meng Miu raised her brows, her brain working quickly. She came to devastating Beauty Kingdom to handle some matters? Sikong Fuling nodded. Go investigate. I want to know what she came here for. The cabin door was suddenly pulled open by someone. Mu Roshen's eyes coldly looked towards the door, only to see a thin young man with a delicate and pretty face walking in with large strides along with two lackeys. You're the daughter of that old hag from Flying Paradise? The newcomer sized her up and spoke with a disdainful attitude. You're just a team of old, weak, sick and disabled people, yet you're still yearning to capture that stoic face alive? You're rather gutsy. I heard that Flying Paradise Woman is a good-for-nothing with zero cultivation and relied on scheming and her body to get to her position. That young man sat down boldly in front of her and sized Mu Rochuan up maliciously. What about you? You're her daughter. But your face is crippled, so you probably don't have the capital to rely on your body to get to her position, right? Mu Rochuan flung out a mystic talisman. The difference between charms and talismans was that high-level talismans required profound energy to activate while charms didn't have this restriction. Otherwise, she, Mu Rochuan, wouldn't be able to do anything. Now that she was concentrating on the study of talisman spells, she had made great progress. Mother probably saw her talent in charms, so she kept her by her side to work for her. Otherwise, why would Flying Paradise keep a trash who had yet to unlock her special ability? Thinking of this, Mu Rochuan couldn't help but sneer at herself. The young man frowned and dodged, but one of his followers was not so lucky. He was hit by the Xian Yin charm and fell to the ground with a howl. The baleful Yin Qi wrapped around his neck, and in just a moment, that layer of black qi strangled him to death. The other follower widened his eyes in horror and took a few steps back. The young man laughed heartily as he sat there and clapped his hands. Impressive, impressive. I've underestimated you. Miss Mu, right? I heard that you and that facial paralysis are sisters? Hidden Moon Hall's Vice Hall Master Bu Yi. Mu Rochuan stared at the moon mark on his sleeve and coldly said, "What are you doing here?" "Of course I'm here to make a deal with you, Miss Mu." Bu Yi chuckled. "I can help you capture that little facial paralysis." Mu Rochuan couldn't help but sneer. Conditions? She wasn't naive enough to believe that the Hidden Moon Hall's Vice Hall Master came here to help her. Chapter 4284. A satisfied smile appeared on Bu Ye's gloomy face. Miss Mu is indeed a smart person. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. My request is very simple. After you catch her, give her to me for 3 days. I'll return her to you after 3 days. Don't worry, I won't kill her. Mu Rochuan sneered. Your Hidden Moon Hall is really filthy. What would happen if a beautiful little girl was handed over to a pervert for 3 days? Mu Rochuan didn't even need to think to know. Bu Yi wasn't angry. He just raised his eyebrows and asked gloomily, "Do you agree?" Mu Rochuan shook her head. I refuse. She had no interest in cooperating with a pervert. What would happen if she asked a tiger for its skin? She knew without thinking. Bu Ye's expression suddenly changed. He approached Mu Rochuan and grabbed her neck. You dare to refuse me? Heer and Hong Chang heard the voice and their expressions changed. Deputy Hall Master Bu Yi. Please stop. Bu Yi glanced at them and said coldly, Since you know my identity, you still dare to be so rude? Heer and Hong Chang cupped their hands in salute. Said with a dark face, Deputy Hall Master, we can accept your proposal. Please let go of the eldest miss first. Where did the eldest miss come from? Bu Yi sneered with a gloomy face and threw Mu Rochuan away. Mu Rochuan was hit by a force and her whole body fell heavily to the side of the bed. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Mu Rochuan hit the middle of the bed. The impact was so great that the bed was smashed into 2 halves. She fell between the 2 pieces of broken wood and struggled for a long time but couldn't get away. Bu Yi stood up straight with a sneer and glanced at Mu Rochuan. Without strength, how can you work for our Tianyun? Talismans and curses? In fact, before you even used the talisman, you were already crushed to death like an ant. Mu Rochuan's expression was calm and indifferent. She struggled to sit up. Remember to clean up a good cabin for me. The man laughed wantonly and left. Young Mississippi, Hong Chang quickly walked forward and wanted to help Mu Rochuan up, but she raised her hands slightly to stop him. Mu Rochuan's expression was calm as she slowly stood up and reached out to support herself against the wall behind her. Today's incident was only the most direct way for her to face a very humiliating thing. She no longer had any cultivation or spiritual power. Even a mere mystic cultivator might be able to knock her to the ground with 1 punch, let alone a second-level godmaster like Vice Hall Master Bai. Mu Rochuan let out a long sigh and closed her eyes. Young Mississippi Hito walked up and said disapprovingly, "Didn't Vice Hall Master Yi propose cooperation just now? Why didn't you agree to it immediately? What are you hesitating for? Could it be that you've really developed sisterly feelings for that little stoic?" "I just don't want to disrupt Mother's original plan," Mu Rochuan said calmly. "I studied Mother's letter from beginning to end several times." She said indifferently, "I discovered that the methods written in the letter aren't important. The most important thing is that we're merely the bait she threw out." He was a bit puzzled and asked with raised brows, "What do you mean?" Chapter 4285. Mu Rochuan's expression was normal, and her emotions didn't fluctuate in the slightest. She only said in an extremely serene tone, "Mother must have sent someone else to secretly capture Arbor. We're merely her chess pieces on the surface." No wonder she felt that her mother's actions this time were a bit strange. Mother had always been steady, crafty, and ruthless. She had fought with the little stoic many times, so there was no way she didn't know that the little stoic was extremely strange. Her subordinates like Hong Chang and He simply couldn't truly fight the little stoic. To put it bluntly, they were people her mother placed on the surface to lure the enemy. Trump cards were often hidden in the deepest parts. "Eldest Miss means that the Hall Master has other arrangements?" He was truly a bit surprised. As the Hall Master's trusted aide, she had never heard the Hall Master mention this matter. Eldest Miss merely studied the Hall Master's letter, yet she managed to figure out so many things? It could be seen that this Mrs. Brain was actually still okay. It was just that she had been blinded by jealousy in the past, which was why she had done many foolish things. Now that she had quieted down and was using a clear head to analyze the situation and view the problem from a new perspective, she was able to see things more thoroughly than them, the Hall Master's trusted aides. Upon hearing Mu Rochuan's analysis, Hong Chang also nodded to express that this was extremely likely the case. Hitler couldn't help but frown and say, "There's no other way now. This Vice Hall Master Bai is extremely skilled, and we're not his match. Besides, with his status, no one here can stop him if he wants to stay. Eldest Miss, let's cooperate with him for the time being. I'll send a message to the Hall Master tonight and ask her what we should do next." Mu Rochuan nodded with an apathetic expression and remained silent. On the other side, Bai boldly ordered his men to bring him to a gorgeous cabin and took over the ship as the Hidden Moon Hall's Vice Hall Master. Vice Hall Master, from the way I see it, although that eldest young miss is temporarily intimidated by Vice Hall Master, she doesn't seem to have much reverence for you. This retainer was evidently frightened by the mystic talismans that Mu Rochuan had played with so well just now. As soon as he returned to the cabin, he hastily instigated Bai. Bai's expression was gloomy as he played with an ivory dagger in his hand and gently caressed the two broken fingers on his left hand. It had been a long time since they parted at the Saint Auspicious Battle Arena. Bu Ye's face looked very delicate and pretty, but there were dark clouds between his brows. "I wonder how you've been doing lately with your stoic face," he coldly muttered as his right hand continuously rubbed the two broken fingers on his left hand back and forth. That day, after leaving the battle arena, the Crown Prince immediately gave the order to kill him. Like a stray dog, he was chased all the way out of the Saint Auspicious Arena. He had lost half his life and 2 fingers. Just when he thought that he was about to die, someone finally came to his rescue, and he managed to keep his life at least a little. How should he settle this debt with that damn little stoic? Bu Yi glanced at his lackey and scolded, "Useless thing, you can't even handle a woman with no cultivation." Don't think that he didn't see it just now. Under the attack of the Xian talisman, this retainer was so scared that his legs trembled. If you dare to be such a coward again, be careful of the head on your neck. The lackey was startled. His body trembled slightly as he nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. Chapter 4286. After leaving the bustling docks, the little crown princess covered her head and walked forward without saying a word. Mo Lien intentionally teased her, but he also knew that she might not be in a good mood at the moment. At a time like this, if she wanted to have some peace and quiet by herself, he naturally had to restrain his urge to lift his arms and hug her, giving her some peace and quiet. It was unknown what Arbor was thinking, but he lowered his head and covered his head as he walked briskly. His pace became faster and faster, and he suddenly sprinted forward. Jojo! Mu Xingchen jumped in fright and hastily sped up to catch up. Mo Lien turned to glance at him. The sapling probably sensed it. Let's quickly follow. The group of people followed the little stoic's rapidly advancing figure and lined up in a row, their speed also increasing by quite a bit. The little stoic suddenly leaped onto a rooftop, and everyone immediately did the same thing. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. They all jumped up and half-crouched down after her. The little mushroom expressionlessly looked back and saw her husband shooting her an aggrieved look with his watery phoenix eyes. Jojo is ignoring me. Arbor reflexively reached out and stroked his husband's head to comfort him. Everyone's mouths twitched as they speechlessly looked at the two's odd interaction. Stroking a dog's head or something seemed to be a certain Jojo's signature gesture. Sure. The little stoic extended a finger and made a shushing gesture. Everyone crouched on the rooftop and looked inside. They saw that the courtyard was currently in an uproar. A 5 to 6-year-old child was madly running around the courtyard with his butt bare. A lush green blade of grass grew on his small head, and a pink pouch was wrapped around his body. He bounced around, and when he saw someone coming to catch him, he would backhand them and give them a big slap. This child was freakishly strong, and several adult servants were not his match. They could only whimper in pain from his violent beatings. Xiao xiao. Qing Shue dashed in from outside and saw this crazy child at a glance. She hastily pacified him. Xiao Chao, calm down, Xiao Chao. The child called Xiao Chao punched her in the face and almost sent her flying. Your Highness. Two female officials leaped forward one after the other and raised their hands to support her. Qing Shue had a bitter expression on her face as she scrambled over and held the child down. She hugged him and cried out pitifully, Xiao Chao, mother is here. Look at your mother. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Mother's hand is about to be broken by you. Your Highness. The entire courtyard was in chaos. Quite a few bodyguards rushed in from outside, their eyes red as they tried to save their princess. However, Qing Shue raised her hand and called out to them in a low voice, don't come over. Little doll kicked Qing Shue to the ground. Qing Shue rolled on the ground pathetically. When she turned around, she saw that the baby's eyes were filled with irritation. He was jumping up and down, roaring angrily. Seed fragment? Mo Lien looked back at Xiao Mu inquiringly. What was going on? She had never seen a seed fragment so manic, as if it was suffering from bipolar disorder. Arbor nodded and tugged at his finger, indicating for them to stay up there. He then flashed and floated to Qing Shue. Qing Shue was currently holding her waist and crying out. When she looked up and saw the little stoic's expressionless face, she was instantly stunned. Chapter 4287. Hey, aren't you there? Before he could say the words, stoic young lady, a green vine shot out from the little stoic's palm and darted towards the toddler. The green vine coiled a few times and tied up the irritable toddler in a few minutes. The green vine coiled around his hands and feet several times and firmly tied him up. The toddler fell to the ground with a bang, but his black beady eyes were wide open as he stared straight at Arbor. His hands and feet were tied up, and he was lying on his side on the ground, but he still refused to give up and moved his hands and feet. His watery eyes looked pitifully at Arbor. Ah! The toddler opened his mouth and shouted, ah, your head. A tiny tree ant with thin arms and legs suddenly popped out from between the green vine leaves that coiled around him and smacked the toddler's head without a second word. Why are you so stupid? You're already so old, so how did you end up like this? Chiu scolded with an exasperated expression. How can you run around naked? You don't know shame, but I still want my old face. As he spoke, the tree fork-like hand repeatedly smacked the toddler's head 3 times. The toddler's face was fierce, and his eyes instantly filled with tears. On the side, Qing Shue's heart ached terribly when she saw this. She hurriedly pounced over and swatted away the tiny Trent's claws. She hugged the toddler and repeatedly said, "My child. How are you?" Does your head hurt? Mother will have someone cook something delicious for you, so don't make a fuss. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Qing Shueshue's back and said after a while, Your body has never been pregnant before, so how can you have a child? When Qing Shueshue saw Arbor's stance, she hastily reached out to hug the toddler who was entangled in the vines and couldn't move. Xiao Chao is my child. Don't think about snatching him away. Nonsense. Qiuqiu stomped his feet in anger. You clearly know what he is, so why do you keep making irresponsible remarks to us? I don't care. Xiao Chao is my child. You can't take him away. Qing Shueshue glared at Arbor defensively. He turned around and pointed at the little tray ant. What the hell are you? A piece of wood that looked like it had a nose, eyes, hands, and feet. What exactly was it? You are the daughter of Her Majesty the Queen of Beauty Nation? Arbor heard the way everyone addressed Qing Shueshue and knew that the girl in front of her was probably the person whose status was second only to the queen in the entire womanland. Holding the child in her arms, Qing Shueshue stood up and tugged at the green vines tied to the child's body. What is this? Hurry up and untie him. After you undo it, he will still hit you. The little stoic calmly stated the facts. How did you know? Qing Shueshue was exasperated. Because he wants to come back to me, that's why he went crazy. Arbor was still very calm, but the words that came out of his mouth made Qing Shueshue uncomfortable. Qing Shueshue could not help but be amused. You speak as if it's true. Why does my son want to return to your side? She's not your son. You haven't lived with someone before, so you don't have a son. The group of Phoenix clansmen squatting on the roof almost rolled off the roof. Fuck. Their Lord Holy Daughter truly wouldn't rest until she shocked people to death with her words. Qing Shueshue's charming little face flushed red, and she looked at the two female officials beside her with a guilty conscience. Sure enough, the latter stared at her in shock with an expression of disagreement. Chapter 4288. Qing Shueshue was indignant, and she turned to glare at Arbor in a flustered and exasperated manner. Damn it, this stoic face actually exposed the mystery of the matter that she had originally kept a secret. It was truly infuriating. The two female officials glared at Princess Qing Shueshue with resentful gazes for a long time, and they couldn't help but beat their chests and stomp their feet. In that case, you didn't use any of the 18 handsome men Her Majesty the Queen bestowed to Princess Qing Shueshue last time? Mu Xingqian. Qing Shueshue awkwardly pursed her lips and moved back while hugging little Six, who was bound by vines. Her eyes contained incomparable sincerity as she looked at the two female officials and said, Ladies, this matter is a misunderstanding. Let's go. This matter is of great importance. We must report it to Her Majesty the Queen. Qing Shueshue's face alternated between red and green. From the looks of it, she really wanted to pounce over and kill the two female officials to silence them. However, she couldn't move. She glared at Arbor like a tiger watching its prey and hugged fragment number 6 tightly without letting go. She could feel that the child in her arms was struggling to break free. She quickly reached out and stroked the leaves on his head to appease him. Little grass, don't panic. Mother is here. The two female officials didn't leave immediately. After all, a woman with an unknown background had intruded into the princess's court. Their primary duty was still to protect Her Highness the Princess. Don't come over. She saw Arbor walking towards her. Qing Shueshue hurriedly hugged fragment little Six's body and retreated several steps. I'm telling you, this is my child. You can't snatch him. Little Tree Qiuqiu angrily hopped onto Arbor's shoulder and placed one hand on his waist like a teapot. What do you mean yours? Who's yours? Little Six, come back. Fragment little Six struggled and flapped his little hands and feet, trying to break free from Qing Shueshue's embrace. However, Qing Shueshue didn't loosen her grip on his hands and feet. Fragment little Six struggled for a long time but couldn't break free, and he anxiously screamed, Ah! Arbor stretched out a small hand and made a gesture of consoling Qing Shueshue. She turned to look at Qing Shueshue and said indifferently, How can you return him to me? Qing Shueshue stood in front of little six and shoved his small body behind her. She said gloomily, "Yes. Although Xiao Chao isn't my biological child, I picked him up from the sea. I treat him like my own son. I wouldn't trade him for anything." "You want his life force," Arbor said calmly. Qing Shueshue was stunned and her face immediately flushed red. "Don't be so self-righteous. I don't have any ulterior motives towards Xiao Chao. If you did, you would be dead by now." Qing Shueshue was stunned again. Her eyes widened as she stared at Arbor in disbelief. "You? Aren't you being too bold? Do you know who I am? Queen Qingqing, Queen Qingqing, Qing Shueshue, the next successor of Beauty Kingdom. It's good that you know." Qing Shueshue pouted. When she felt Xiao Chao move behind her, she quickly held his little hand tightly. "Since I picked Xiao Chao up a year ago, Xiao Chao has been my family and my younger brother." Qing Shueshue guarded Fragment Little Six, who was behind her. She stared cautiously at Xiao Mu. I won't give him to you." Mo Lian leaped and floated to Arbor's side. Mu Xingchen, Feng Zhangqing, Feng Zhangfei, and the others also leaped over and stood beside Arbor. Chapter 4289. You want to rob me? Qing Shueshue's porcelain white face darkened as she glared at the people in front of her. "Your Highness." A large group of guards rushed over from all directions and surrounded Arbor, Mo Lian, and the others without any explanation. Qing Shueshue straightened her body and raised her hand to stop the guards from attacking. However, she still glared at Arbor warily. "I have no enmity with you, so leave quickly. I don't want to hurt anyone. Let me tell you, if you want to rob me, you've come to the wrong place." Qiuqiu was so angry that it hopped around indignantly on Xiao Mu's shoulder. "You woman, what a weirdo. You want to rob my family's little six, but you say we're robbing you?" Arbor patted Qiuqiu's head comfortingly and said faintly, "I heard that your alluring female kingdom has an unwritten rule. What are you trying to say?" Qing Shueshue had a cautious expression on her face as she held Xiao Cao's hand tightly. Her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. "It said that your citizens can challenge other people's men if they like them. The winner can get this person?" Mo Lian, Mu Xingchen, Qing Shueshue's legs almost gave out. Two female officials rushed up to support her. They clenched their fists tightly and shouted, "How dare you! Your Highness, accept her challenge. Your Highness, accept her challenge. Don't be afraid. You can't be a coward. You can't embarrass Her Majesty." "That's right. Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness." Qing Shueshue nearly lost her footing, and she glared at Xiao Mu with her bulging eyes in exasperation. She shouted repeatedly, Where did you hear this from? There's no such thing." Arbor glanced at her leisurely. "Then why don't you give him back?" "Impossible." Qing Shueshue stood in front of Fragment Little Six and shouted angrily, "Don't even think about stealing my brother." Qiuqiu snorted. One moment he smashed, the next moment he took his brother. "Let me tell you, it's useless even if you call him husband. He's my little six, so he should be returned to my family." Qing Shueshue's face was flushed red as she gasped for breath. Unexpectedly, he was kicked by a small foot. When she looked back, she saw that Fragment Little Six had undone the vines binding him at some point in time. He happily fluttered over to Xiao Mu and hugged her calf at once. "Don't hug Master's leg," Qiuqiu said angrily. "You traitor!" Scram. Fragment Little Six used its short legs to crawl towards Xiao Mu with all its might. However, a second later, Crown Prince Mo picked her up with a disdainful expression and shook her chubby little body. "Whoa!" Qiuqiu hit the child's head with a tree branch in annoyance. "You're not a wolf, so what are you howling for?" Arbor looked at the interaction between the two brothers expressionlessly and said calmly, "You also liked to howl when you were young." Qiuqiu was speechless. Xiao Mu took out a brush and paper from her inner world, and with a flick of her finger, she flicked that letter of challenge to Qing Shueshue. "Today, at the Heavenly Battle platform at your gorgeous island's Great Beauty Plaza, We will respectfully await your highness's arrival. Qing Shue hurriedly ran forward and took Xiao Chao from Emolien's hands. She hugged the struggling child and looked back at Arbor. She said angrily, "Let's fight then. Who's afraid of you? The princess is mighty. The princess is mighty." A group of female guards shouted with their fists clenched. Chapter 4290. In the backyard of the first princess residence. Suddenly, a human head popped out of the dog hole and nudged it a little. A female official standing in front of the hole turned her head. "Your Highness, what are you doing?" The voice was so loud that it almost pierced through the clouds, causing the princess to frown. Qing Shue smiled awkwardly. He, female official Zhao, are you here? If this official isn't here, does your highness plan to slip away from here and not participate in the Heavenly Battle Platforms challenge? Hey you guys. Softer, softer, softer. Qing Shue was dragged out of the dog hole. She was held by 2 arms and dragged all the way back to her own courtyard. How dare you? Qing Shue tried her best to keep a straight face and said angrily, "Who told you to drag me back?" "Greetings, your highness." A dignified and calm middle-aged woman appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. Her appearance wasn't very exquisite, but her aura was very elegant. When Qing Shue saw her, her small face immediately fell. A moment later, Qing Shue lay on the bed and kept pounding the bed with her small fists. She wailed, "I can't beat her, I definitely can't beat her. You don't know how abnormal that fellow is. When we were on the street, even big sister Sikong Fuling wasn't her match. That little devil, if she whipped me with her vine, I might die." The dignified and calm middle-aged woman looked calmly at a certain someone who was rolling around on the bed and wrapped in the blanket like a cocoon. She said softly, "The Heavenly Battle Platforms challenge has been reported to your highness." Qing Shue instantly froze and drooped her small head listlessly. Her entire body was filled with a gloomy aura that said, "I might die soon." What? Qing Shue covered her small face and raised her head to cry bitterly. "It's over, it's over, it's over, it's over." Her mind went blank and she agreed to fight. The result now was that she might not live past tonight. Wah, one of the 2 female officials had a dark look on her face as she angrily called out, "Your Highness, can't you do this? Can you work harder? What do I have to fight for? I'm about to die." Qing Shue held the blanket and shouted anxiously, I don't care, I don't care. In short, I can't go to the Heavens battle stage. I'm sure I can't beat her. Even if we can't win, we still have to fight." The dignified woman said calmly. "Teacher." Qing Shue looked as if the sky was about to collapse. She looked at the woman with a distressed expression. He Luan's expression remained calm. "Even if you can't beat me, you should at least go up on stage and accept your loss. Do you want the people of devastating female kingdom to look down on you?" Qing Shue revealed a pitiful expression. She hugged the quilt and cried out miserably, "I know. Master, why do you want to challenge her?" The little tray ant stood majestically on Arbor's shoulder, waving a small branch hand and shouting angrily, "Let's just take little Six back." Arbor raised his hand and stroked his little head. She took care of little Six for more than a year and didn't have any bad intentions towards him. I want her to willingly hand over little Six. Master, then will you be merciful to her? Arbor shook his head. I will respect my opponent, no matter who she is. Emolien's mouth twitched. Chapter 4291. The Great Beauty Plaza was extremely famous in Beauty Nation. This was because there were 4 pillars in the plaza, and each pillar had a statue of a handsome man standing on it. Some of them were valiant, while others were gentle and slender. All of them were young and beautiful and quite eye-catching. The Heavens battle stage was located at the center of the Beauty's Great Plaza. At this moment, the plaza was already filled with people. Those who came early had already occupied the advantageous terrain and climbed up to watch the battle. Around the plaza, the tea houses and wine shops that could clearly see the heavenly battle platform were also packed with people. Heads poked out of the window one after another, shouting along with the cheers of the crowd. Her Majesty Qing Yi, the Empress of fallen beauty country, was sitting on the second floor of the tea house, in an elegant private room, calmly looking at the situation in the square. Your Majesty, Her Highness Princess is not here yet. A female officer beside Yi Qing Yi greets her respectfully and lowers her head. Qing Yi couldn't help but rub her forehead. She really couldn't do anything to her daughter. She's here, she's here. Her Highness the Princess is here. An excited voice suddenly came from the window. Queen Qing Yi stands up and goes to the window. Looking down from the second floor of the tea house, one could see that the square was filled with people. Qing Shueshue was escorted by more than a dozen female attendants. She was wearing an emerald green tight-fitting shirt with arrow sleeves, which made her round little face look very charming. When Qing Shueshue approached the heavenly battle stage, she saw the little stoic strolling over from the other side of the crowd. Her appearance was extremely delicate. Under her simple white clothes, there was no makeup on her small face. Such a cold and indifferent woman, as long as she walked in front of people, they would be unable to look away. Long Shangyun rolled her eyes. Big brother, what's wrong? It hadn't even been half a day since they entered devastating female kingdom, and this stoic face was already stirring up trouble and fighting with someone? I heard that this guy is challenging the princess of devastating beauty country. Is there a need to be so explosive? Long Huan's face was filled with helplessness. Let's wait and see. The little stoic's husband and older brother didn't say anything, so they, as cousins, didn't need to be so long-winded. Always causing trouble. Long Shangyun muttered unhappily. Your Highness, Your Highness. In the entire Beauty's Plaza, all the subjects of devastating beauty country were excitedly cheering for their princess. However, Princess Qing Shueshue's heart was beating like a drum. Hearing the shouts around her, she could only force herself to smile awkwardly. Qing Shueshue pulled open the silk button under her collar and neatly took off the embroidered cloak that was covering her. His movements looked extremely confident and at ease. With a swing of his cloak, he valiantly leaped into the air and did a somersault, landing on the Heaven's Battle platform. As a result, the excited cries of the women in the Beauty Plaza became even more intense. Your Highness, Your Highness. Her Highness will win. The princess will win. Compared to the sea of people calling for the princess, Arbor was extremely quiet. The group of Phoenix clansmen actually wanted to cheer for their holy lady or something, but when Her Highness swept a cool glance over them, they could only shrink back their voices. The Phoenix clansmen were very certain that if they shouted now, Her Highness would definitely look at them with disdain as if she was looking at an idiot. Chapter 4292. Qing Shueshue stood on the sky platform with her hands behind her back and assumed a pose as she looked down the stage. Her gaze landed on Arbor, who was surrounded by everyone. The calmer the little stoic's expression was, the more scared Qing Shueshue felt. Could it be that she was imagining things? This stoic didn't use any fancy moves and flew onto the stage to attract everyone's attention. She walked up the sky platform step by step and stood in front of her. Qing Shueshue blocked with both hands, looking as if she was facing a great enemy. Where's little six? What little six? Qing Shueshue glared at her. Soon after, she saw female official Zhao walk over while holding an exquisite little doll carved from jade. There was an uproar below the stage. Hey, why is it a little doll? She's quite pretty. But isn't she too lacking in moral integrity? That's right. What are they fighting over such a small doll? Qing Shueshue was flustered and exasperated. She pounced over and hugged her little Chow, glaring at Arbor like a tiger eyeing its prey. Little Chow, don't worry. Older sister will definitely protect you. Fragment little six meaty little fists swung at her face. He moved his little arms and legs and reached out to Arbor with an ah sound. Qing Shueshue couldn't help but feel exasperated and grumpily pulled his little paw down. Little Chow, did you forget that we swore to be sworn brothers in the underwater canyon, that we would never be apart? Fragment Little 6 looked at Qing Shueshue blankly. Female official Zhao expressionlessly snatched the child from Qing Shueshue's hands and bowed, saying, "Your Highness, if you want to protect this child, you have to work hard." Little Chow, Qing Shueshue cried out sorrowfully and turned to glare at Arbor. "What will it take for you to give up?" Arbor shook his head and lightly raised his hand. A jade-green vine shot out from his palm and coiled around her wrist. Fragment Little 6, who was being held in female official Zhao's arms, immediately flailed his little arms and legs restlessly and whined, wanting to return. Female official Zhao helplessly restrained his arms and legs. Arbor turned his head and glanced at him indifferently. Fragment Little 6 obediently stopped moving. Qing Shueshue's lips twitched as she murmured softly, "It is indeed the sacred wood." The green vines on Arbor's wrist suddenly sprang out and fell to the ground in an instant. The thick vines wrapped around the entire sky battle stage. Tens of thousands of trees grew, plants grew, and verdant vines intertwined and grew, propping up a towering umbrella. The crowd couldn't help but let out a soft cry. Looking back, he saw that the vines under the eaves and the trees on the road had all sprung up, as if they had been injected with an excessive amount of vitality, growing upwards with a whoosh. Fragment Little 6 twisted its chubby body restlessly, and an indescribable light shone from its small, beady eyes. Arbor summoned a pitch-black ferrule from his consciousness and held it in his hand. His gaze was clear and cold as he looked at Qing Shueshue before him. "Do it." Female official Zhao held the child and turned to glance at He Luan, who had an indifferent expression. "Lady He." Female official Zhao sighed and said, "How long do you think Her Highness the Princess can last in the other party's hands?" Before He Luan could say anything, her eyelids jerked violently. Qing Shueshue darted forward and stretched out both hands, forcefully grasping the little stoic's hand that was holding the ferrule. Her legs turned to jelly, and she knelt in front of the other party. She raised her small head and shouted, I admit defeat." Chapter 4293. There was complete silence all around. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the princess and couldn't find their voices for a long time. Mei Zhao's eyebrows twitched. She suddenly felt that she had overestimated the princess's moral integrity. It could be said that Her Royal Highness was born with no moral integrity. Arbor looked expressionlessly at Qing Shueshue, who was grabbing her right hand. "You agree to return Little 6 to me?" Qing Shueshue shook her head like a rattle drum. "No, I won't return it." "Bah, what do you mean you won't return it?" "Little Chow is my younger brother. Why should I return him to you?" "Fight then." "I won't fight, I won't fight, I won't fight." Qing Shueshue clung to Arbor's hand and screamed, "Don't think about bullying me. I can't beat you, I can't beat you. I won't fight with you." Arbor was speechless. From Sikong Planet to the Divine Continent, she met many people along the way. There were many weirdos, but the weirdest girl couldn't compare to the one in front of her. "You want to act shamelessly?" Arbor stared at the lass with a strange expression. Who said I'm acting shamelessly?" Qing Shueshue was frightened by her gaze and her body trembled slightly. Then she hugged Arbor's right arm even more tightly. I can give you other things? In my Qingqing female kingdom's treasury, you can ask for any treasure. But you can't take little Chow away. Greetings, Your Majesty the Queen." Qing Shueshue heard the voices coming from all around. Her hands that were holding onto Arbor suddenly stiffened. She turned her neck mechanically and saw the woman walking through the vines onto the heavenly battle stage. She almost fell to the ground. Xiao Mu raised her eyes and looked over. She saw Her Majesty the Queen walking up calmly. She wore an ink-colored robe with a cotton red belt around her waist and a small light green jade gourd on it. "Who is Long Chuyun to you?" Qin Ye's face had a hint of excitement. Xiao Mu examined the queen from head to toe. She wanted to pull her hand back, but Qing Shueshue refused to let go. She could only drag Qing Shueshue forward a few steps and reluctantly saluted with cupped fists. "It's my mother." Qing Yi looked at Arbor with excitement. After a while, she nodded. Okay. With a wave of his hand, Arbor retrieved all the vines, and the platform regained its freshness. "Child, follow me to the palace." The queen nodded at Arbor. Arbor took a small step and found that he was dragging a guy on his wrist. This fellow was still holding onto her right hand tightly without letting go, even though she had already put the feral back into her conscious. "Can you stop dragging me? It was really troublesome to walk like this." "Then you promise me that you'll give up on Xiao Xiao?" Arbor shook his head. Qing Shueshue was furious. "Why are you so stubborn? Don't even think about snatching Xiao Xiao away from me." Arbor walked down the platform expressionlessly. Long Shangyun saw that he was still dragging Princess Qing Shueshue, and couldn't bear to look at them. Inside the Leaning Phoenix Pavilion, Her Majesty the Queen was leaning against a throne as she surveyed Xiao Mu, who was sitting in front of a small table, with a smile. Princess Qing Shueshue was still hanging onto Arbor's right arm like a ghost. After being glared at by the queen, Qing Shueshue's entire body stiffened, but her hands were still hanging onto Arbor's arm. "Extremely rude." The queen reprimanded. "Why aren't you letting go?" "No, mother, I want her to promise not to snatch Xiao Xiao away from me." Chapter 4294. The queen glared at her and reprimanded, "You've already lost. What else do you want?" Qing Shueshue wished that she could roll around on the ground. She looked at her mother with pleading eyes and cried out, "Mother, I picked Xiao Xiao up from the sea." Qing Shueshue looked at Arbor, who was looking down at her. She moved her mouth and retracted her hand, feeling aggrieved. She obediently knelt beside Arbor. She turned around and looked at Arbor seriously. "More than a year ago, I was in trouble in the underwater canyon. It was Xiao Xiao who accidentally saved my life. I'm not coveting his vitality. I just want to protect him and take good care of him." Arbor looked at her and nodded after a long time. "He's a fragment of the sacred wood seed. He's a part of my Qiuqiu." Arbor raised his hand and patted the little tray ant on his shoulder. He turned to look at Qing Shueshue and said, "I respect Little Six's choice. If he doesn't want to come back and wants to stay by your side, then I won't force him. It's just that he can't grow. He'll probably stay in this form in the future." Qiuqiu squatted on Little Masta's shoulder and glared fiercely at the child in Mei Zhao's arms. "You dare to make Little Masta sad, I'll destroy you." The fragment Little Six quickly pushed Mei Zhao away and ran to Arbor's side with its short legs. It threw itself into his arms. Qing Shueshue lowered her head pitifully. The queen waved at her daughter and called her to her side. She said in a low voice, "Shueshue, fate brings us together. You can't force it. Since the sacred wood seed saved your life, it's your benefactor. You can't force it to stay or go. Otherwise, wouldn't you be biting the hand that feeds you?" "I know," Qing Shueshue said listlessly with her head drooped. The queen smiled and patted her daughter's hand. "Then return the sacred wood seed to your sister Arbor." Qing Shueshue nodded her little head. She still didn't have much energy, but she didn't make trouble for no reason. "Xingchen, Xiao Xiao, may I call you this?" The queen looked gently at Mu Xingchen and Xiao Mu, who were seated below her. The two of them nodded. The queen smiled and said, "Your mother and I were once sworn sisters with different surnames. We have a deep relationship. In the future, you can call me Aunt Yi." She placed her hand on the light green jade gourd hanging from her waist, a look of nostalgia and melancholy on her face. In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. Back then, the scenes of me and your mother training outside are still vivid in my mind. Your mother and I are sworn sisters. You and Xue Xue should address each other as brothers and sisters." Long Shangyun sat beside her brother and tugged at Long Huan's sleeve. Long Huan secretly patted her hand, indicating for her to calm down. Qing Shueshue stood up and curtsied to Mu Xingchen. She then curtsied to Qiao Mu with a drooping head. "Brother Xingchen, Sister Qiao, Shueshue was insensible earlier and made a fool of herself in front of you." Arbor and Mu Xingchen both stood up and returned Qing Shueshue's bow. Then, the three of them sat down together. Mo Lien turned his head to glance at his wife with a smile. "Xingchen, Jojo, tomorrow is the most joyous day in our beauty kingdom. Why don't you stay and spend the day with me? The queen asked with a smile. Xiao Mu nodded. Auntie, can you tell us about mother? Chapter 4295. The queen's eyes revealed a trace of yearning and reminiscence. She raised her hand to invite everyone to the feast and said softly, "That year, your mother and I were training in the Forgotten River Cold Valley. We encountered many dangers, but also many opportunities. Your mother became famous at a young age. At that time in the Forgotten River, she was known far and wide. When people mentioned your mother, they would give her a thumbs up." The queen couldn't help but laugh when she mentioned this. I was unconvinced and went to find her to fight. During the feast, the queen talked about many past events, and the younger generation listened with great interest. When night fell, the queen naturally let them stay in the palace. Arbor pushed open the window and looked at the half-moon hanging high above the trees. Her eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence. Big brother drank a lot today. Mo Lien hugged her waist from behind and lowered his head to rub against her head. Because Big Brother is very happy today. Arbor nodded slightly. They all felt that it was very novel to be able to hear so many of their mother's old stories. It seemed that in their hearts, they felt that they were one step closer to their mother. Holy land of Snow Ridge, Forgotten River Cold Valley, abyss of Sacrificial Sea, Pond Lotus Sacred Land. Arbor whispered, Auntie said that my mother has been to all of these famous adventure holy lands in the Forgotten River. When I stepped into this sea area, it was as if I could feel her presence. There are traces of her everywhere. This feeling was somewhat strange, but also made them happy. Mo Lien lowered his head and kissed her little face. Yes, we can be one step closer to our mother. Arbor turned to look at him and raised her hand to hug his neck. Wherever Jojo goes, Jojo's lotus will follow. Mo Lien couldn't help but want to laugh. He nodded and leaned closer to her. Of course. Jojo, your husband will always be with you. He rubbed his lips on her face and reached out to carry her horizontally. He turned and opened the curtain. The next morning, Arbor was awakened by a loud noise. He opened his misty eyes in a daze. She looked around and saw that her husband was dressed in a light blue robe. His phoenix-like eyes were sparkling and he had a faint smile on his face. He looked refreshed as he walked into the house. Very naturally, he lifted his wife up and helped her wash up and dress. Mo Lien leaned close to her ear and whispered, "The queen's birthday is starting. It's so lively outside. Chow chow, let's go out and take a look. Today, there are all kinds of hawkers on the streets. There's a dazzling array of food and drinks outside. Let's go out and eat." Arbor nodded. His eyelids were still drooping. He was not fully awake yet. Mo Lien couldn't help but chuckle after wiping her face. He kissed her on the lips and said, "Chow chow, you look so cute with that blank expression on your face. She still hasn't woken up? Take a look at your husband." Arbor glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. She reached out a little paw and pushed his handsome face that was close to hers. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. He took her little paw in his hand and bit it gently. "Don't push. Don't push me." Arbor's mind cleared up a little at his teasing. She nuzzled her head against Mo Lien's shoulder. "Jojo's lotus, it's hotter today than yesterday, isn't it?" Jojo's lotus was warm in winter and cool in summer. It was comfortable to hug her. Mo Lien's body temperature was lower than usual. For a cultivator like him, his body temperature could rise or fall as he wished. Chapter 4296. Mo Lien narrowed her eyes and rubbed her head against Arbor's body a little proudly. "It's hot outside, but with me hugging you, Jojo won't feel hot." "Older sister Chiao, older sister Chiao." Loud shouts came from outside. The door to the private room was shaken from the outside, and the door bolt fell off. Qing Shue rushed in recklessly. Arbor immediately pushed Mo Lien away, jumped down from his body, and straightened his clothes. Qing Shue rushed in quickly, so she naturally saw that the two of them were originally stuck together, but they suddenly separated when she came in. Mo Lien immediately became a little unhappy. His handsome face darkened as he said unhappily, Why didn't you knock and just barge in? Qing Shue was instantly embarrassed. She scratched her head and quickly escaped outside. I'll wait for you outside. Arbor shook his head. Qing Shue, as a princess, had such a carefree and strange personality. It was really difficult for the queen. The two of them tidied up a little and walked out hand in hand. They saw Qing Shue standing in front of the main hall, pacing back and forth. When she turned around and saw the two of them, Qing Shue's eyes couldn't help but brighten. Older sister Qiao, it's very lively outside today. I'll take you out for a walk. Oh right, where's Xiao? Let him out too. Xiao Qiao loves to watch a lively scene. Arbor glanced at her and raised his hand to summon Fragment Little 6. The little doll hung on her arm. She hugged it tightly and swung it left and right in the air. Qing Shue quickly reached out to hug it. Xiao Qiao, did you miss me? Fragment Little 6 indicated that he didn't miss her. He faced Qing Shue with the back of his head and hung on Arbor's arm, continuing to act cute and obedient. Qing Shue angrily muttered, "Little heartless," but still reached out to take Fragment Little 6. She turned to Arbor and smiled, "Let's go, I'll take you out for a walk." "Your Highness." Female officer Zhao bowed as she entered, her face solemn and dignified. Behind her, a man in embroidered clothes with a jade-like face and slim figure followed in. He bowed to everyone with a gentle expression. "Song Feng greets Your Highness, Crown Prince and Crown Princess." Qing Shue looked a little frightened and hid behind Arbor. Arbor was a little startled. She looked young Master Song Feng up and down and raised her eyebrows slightly. This is young Master Song Feng. He stood out in the Beauty Appreciation Conference. Female officer Zhao said expressionlessly. He is also one of the servants that Her Majesty the Queen bestowed upon the princess. Your Highness is going out today, so please take young Master Song Feng with you. Qing Shue instantly revealed a hopeless expression. She clutched Xiao Mu's sleeve tightly as she hid behind Xiao Mu. She only stuck out her head and hollered without any dignity, "No need, this royal princess has someone to keep me company today. No, we don't need him to follow us." Female officer Zhao's face was solemn and dignified. "This is Her Majesty the Queen's order. Your Highness has long been of marriageable age. It's time to get married and have children, so that our Qing royal family can have children." Qing Shue immediately shrank behind Arbor with a panicked expression. Female officer Zhao, you go find someone else. Arbor turned to look at Qing Shue. Seeing that her panic didn't seem to be fake, she couldn't help but curse in her heart. Is this girl suffering from androphobia? Female officer Zhao ignored her and cupped her hands, saying, "After the Queen's birthday, Your Highness, please take young master back to the mansion." Qing Shue clutched Arbor's sleeve tightly. Chapter 4297. After Maid Zhao glanced at her and left, Qing Shue was still nervously holding on to Arbor, her eyes glaring at young Master Song Feng in front of her. Arbor pulled her sleeve out of Qing Shue's hand, lightly brushed the creases on it, and coldly stared at the smiling young master in embroidered clothes standing at the door. "I was wondering why the 7 flowers of Spring Pavilion came here. It turns out it's because young Master Song Feng is here." She really didn't expect that a male procuress of a small brothel could now openly enter the residence of the first princess of Womanland. This was really strange. It was hard for people not to be puzzled. "I've embarrassed myself in front of the crown princess." Young Master Song Feng smiled, neither servile nor overbearing. "I only won at the beauty pageant because of good luck." According to the custom of Womanland, anyone who wins at the beauty pageant can be granted a new identity by Her Majesty the Queen, regardless of their origin or past. Arbor glanced at him indifferently, nodded, and didn't continue. On the side, Qing Shue turned to look at Arbor, a little excited. "You know him? Why don't you take him back?" Xiao Mu glared daggers at her, while Crown Prince Mo also cast a sidelong glance at Qing Shue. Qing Shue's small body trembled for no reason, and then she swallowed back her words. I'm just joking. Why are you so serious? I know you have a husband." Your husband is so beautiful. You really don't like other people. Arbor only felt that Qing Shueshue's words were a little strange. What, if her husband wasn't beautiful, could she change her husband at any time? Sir Jojo didn't want to talk to a good-looking dog. Let's go, let's go. Today is my mother's birthday. All the drinks in the streets and alleys are free. I'll take you to drink our womanland's most famous new hong. We'll eat the most delicious barbecue. Let's go. Qing Shueshue led Arbor and others out of the palace gate and went to the busiest street. Long Shangyun followed behind them and tugged at Long Huan's arm. Long Huan helplessly turned to look at his younger sister. Shangyun, the matter of Aunt Chu Yun being on good terms with the Queen of Beauty Kingdom is also recorded in our clan's records. What's wrong with you? Don't you find it strange? Long Shangyun glanced at Qing Shueshue in front of her. How can a princess have such a straightforward personality? It's as if she doesn't understand the affairs of the world at all. Her Majesty doesn't only have one daughter, right? It is said that this princess was able to summon the power of the sea from the moment she was born. This is Beauty Kingdom's family matter. What does it have to do with us? Long Huan shook his head and said, Shangyun, why do you care about this? I think Arbor might have been fooled. Long Shangyun curled her lips. She looks fierce, but she's just a child. After a few words from others, you're already running around with them. Perhaps that princess is hiding some evil intentions. How would she be able to tell? Long Huan looked at her strangely. Shangyun, why are you worried about her? Long Shangyun glared. Why should I be worried about her? I'm not worried about her. It's just that we're going the same way. If something happens to her, it might implicate us siblings. Long Shangyun rolled her eyes. Don't worry. Cousin might look young, but she's much smarter than you. She won't be fooled. Chapter 4298. Don't worry. I reckon that whoever tries to deceive her will be in trouble. Long Huan shook his head and said in a low voice, Moreover, cousin's methods are very sharp. If someone really messes with her, I'm afraid they'll have to face the consequences. Long Shangyun glared at her brother angrily. Brother, your evaluation of this person is getting higher and higher. Long Huan silently lowered his eyes and only cursed in his heart. That's because we've suffered so much in her hands. That evaluation is accumulated from past bloody experiences. Who's worried about her? Long Shangyun angrily turned and ran towards the crowded street. Brother, my ivory trisklet is broken. Buy me a new one. Arbor withdrew his gaze from Long Shangyun and turned to look at Princess Qing Shueshue, who was squeezing in front of the crowd and buying things for little six. Mo Lien raised his eyebrows and said, Suspicious. Arbor shook his head. If Qing Shueshue didn't want to return little six to me, she could have ordered people to surround and attack us that day in the princess residence. But she didn't. She even said she didn't want to hurt anyone and told us to leave on our own. Arbor said softly, a person's eyes can't lie. She's just a playful person. She's not a bad person. And I can feel that strong water spirit energy in her body. It's second only to holy water. Arbor said softly, if she had fought with me on the heavenly battle platform that day, I might not have been able to defeat her with just the power of holy wood. Unless she used other methods, such as talismans, poison techniques, or summoning the power of earth and water spirits to use holy water to suppress the 9 layers of spirit water in Qing Shueshue's body. Mo Lien smiled faintly as he reached out to hold his wifey's hand, his face full of pride. He knew that as long as his Jojo calmed down, he would be able to see the situation and people's hearts clearly. His Jojo was very smart. Although little six dislikes her, he doesn't reject her. Arbor said softly, who knows what will happen if they meet or part if they meet. They don't have much time left together. Let them be. Jojo, you're so nice. Mo Lien smiled and shook Jojo's little hand. Her eyes fell on young Master Song Feng, who was following behind Qing Shueshue, and she frowned slightly. That person? Arbor frowned and said thoughtfully, I think I've seen him somewhere before. Mo Lien paused for a moment, then curled her lips and snorted, isn't it just the spring house? He had also seen that male procuress from the spring-filled house. Mo Lien remembered that when he went to find Sir Chiao Chiao, he had met this person, Seven Flowers, as well as Fan Meng and Fan Yu once or twice. Xiao Mu shook her head and knitted her small brows. No, it's not spring. However, she always felt that there were some things in her mind that couldn't be connected. If she could find the pattern, she would naturally be able to unravel this mystery. Mo Lien was stunned when he heard that. He turned to look at young Master Song Feng and took a deep look. Jojo, this is easy. He leaned close to her and whispered in her ear. Arbor nodded. Yes, be careful. Of course. Mo Lien held her little hand and pulled her to a stall on the side. Jojo, do you want tofu pudding? Yes. Jojo's eyes lit up. Without her husband holding her hand, she walked in that direction with small steps. Chapter 4299. The tofu pudding stall on the street had 5 or 6 tables, and they were all occupied by the crowd. If the young couple wanted to eat, they could only stand there and hold it in their hands. Even so, Lady Jojo was still in high spirits. She rarely came out for a stroll, and she usually didn't like crowded places. But since it was rare for her to come out for a stroll, it was also a life experience to occasionally enjoy this kind of crowded place. Holy maiden, what flavor do you want to eat? This subordinate will buy it for you. Do you want something spicy? Do you want something spicy? Mo Lien brushed aside a long-winded Wind Clan member and took out some money to buy a bowl of light flavor. Jojo, your husband actually knows how to make it. Next time, let's make it at home. You can choose the flavor. Arbor nodded and reached for the spoon, but Mo Lien grabbed her little hand and held the bowl in one hand and the spoon in the other. She scooped a mouthful and brought it to her lips. Be careful, it's hot. Lady Jojo was used to being served by her husband at home, so she naturally ate the mouthful with a clear conscience and obediently accepted the crown prince's feeding. But for some reason, she suddenly felt that the surroundings were a little quiet, so Arbor turned around to look. She saw that the men and women in front of 5 or 6 tables were all staring at the two of them without blinking. The envy in the women's eyes couldn't be concealed at all. Wow, look at that girl's husband, he's so virtuous. Yes, he looks like a celestial that walked out of a painting. Those phoenix eyes are so seductive. Aya, my heart can't help but pound. Where can I find such a beautiful and virtuous husband? Lien. Suddenly, a woman wearing a leopard print cloak stood up and cupped her hands at Arbor. Hey, this girl, I'll pay 10,000 spirit coins to buy this husband beside you. Are you willing to sell him to me? If you're not satisfied with the price, I can increase it further. Feng Zhangfei couldn't help but burst out laughing. Heavens, what are these women thinking? Unexpectedly, the woman's eyes lit up as she looked at him. She pointed at Feng Zhangfei and said, Young lady, I'll bid 15,000 spirit coins if you add this person. Feng Zhangfei was dumbfounded. 20,000. 30,000. 30,000. Jojo was so angry that her face turned red. Before her husband could explode, she roared, Get lost. Her voice was long and menacing, and the surrounding women couldn't help but tremble. However, the silence lasted for less than 3 seconds, and once again, a fearless and angry roar erupted. Hey miss, look at you. That's not right. You can't have so many men by yourself, right? That's right. Hey, wait a minute. Aren't you the girl I met at the dock yesterday? The one who abandoned me? Right, I recognize her. I recognize her unique stoic face. That's her. Yesterday at the dock, a girl pointed a sword at her and told her to go back and consummate with her big brother. What? There's such a thing? Did she offend someone's unmarried man and then refuse to take responsibility? Hey, she has more than 100 husbands with her. Too greedy. Arbor. A Phoenix clansman hurriedly stepped forward and said to the surrounding crowd, Everyone, disperse, disperse. There's no such thing. Aya, little Langjun, that you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.